Part 57. The Prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 561. After spending so long with Jun Wuxian, even if they communicated with each other, they didn't have any overly intimate actions. Even the hugging like this was rare. Jun Wuxian laughed out loud, "You are my wife-to-be, what's wrong with me hugging you?" Su Qingqing lowered her eyes in shame, "I didn't say you can't hug me." Jun Wuxian just wanted to tease her just now, and seeing that she was so easy to tease, he smiled and put her next to him and sat down. "I saw that you were quite brave before." When she sat on Jun Wuxian just now, Su Qingqing was really shy. In her eyes, such intimate actions can only be done with her husband. Can it be the same before and now? Jun Wuxian looked at her with a smile, "Yes, I always saw you in my nightgown before, and I didn't see your face. My attitude is completely different from when I saw your face." Su Qingqing couldn't help but retort, "Who said that?" "My attitude towards you changed slowly, but it just happened that I saw your face and it changed faster. It's completely different from changing after seeing your face." Jun Wuxian looked at her serious face and laughed, "I know." Su Qingqing took his arm and looked at him with a serious look, "Do you really know?" Since last time, no one knew who told Jun Wuxian that she wanted to enter the palace because she liked Xiao Jinyan's face. Jun Wuxian always said that she liked him because of his face. She wanted Jun Wuxian to know that she liked him not just for his face, but for the feeling of heartbeat. Jun Wuxian pinched her face again and smiled, "Of course." Su Qingqing smiled and suddenly thought of an important question, "Xian, you are engaged, do you really not need to inform your father? Will he say you are too hasty?" Jun Wuxian thought of his father who had a paralyzed face, but he never cared about his wife, even though he was already 30 years old. Just tell him when the time comes, he doesn't care about these things. Su Qingqing didn't know if she had read too many storybooks, and her mind automatically made up that Jun Wuxian was not favored at home and his father didn't care about him. "Do you have a bad relationship with your father? He doesn't care about you." Jun Wuxian smiled and said, "It's true that he doesn't care about me, but the relationship is not bad. When you meet him, you will know." Su Qingqing was a little uneasy when she heard this. Does he have high requirements for his daughter-in-law? He didn't say what he wanted, but judging from his attitude, he shouldn't have any requirements. "I just like him." Jun Wuxian opened his folding fan and fanned while watching Su Qingqing's reaction. Su Qingqing heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. She was afraid that her future parents-in-law would be dissatisfied with her, and Jun Wuxian would be in trouble when they were caught in the middle. "By the way, I haven't traveled far yet. What should I bring? How many sets of clothes should I bring? Should I bring dry food? What should I do if I get hungry on the road?" "Just bring 2 sets of clothes. If you don't have enough clothes, you can buy some on the road. You can bring some dry food just in case. There are inns on the road, so you don't have to worry about most of the food, but..." Jun Wuxian looked Su Qingqing up and down. She was spoiled since she was a child. Can she bear the bumpy ride? Su Qingqing asked, "But what?" Jun Wuxian told the truth, "The journey is long, and your delicate body may not be able to bear the bumpy ride." Su Qingqing was afraid that Jun Wuxian would not take her to find Shen Shuwei. In fact, she was more afraid that Jun Wuxian would leave and they would not see each other for several months. For more than a year, she has had enough of the eager waiting. She took Jun Wuxian's arm and said, "I'm not afraid. You promised to take me with you. You can't go back on your word." Jun Wuxian chuckled, "I won't go back on my word. To make the journey quicker, we'll use the carriage and horses alternately. Ask Caixia to prepare some more cushions." "Okay, I'll ask Caixia to prepare them now." Su Qingqing was about to stand up when she heard Caixia's cheerful voice from outside the door, "Miss, I'll go right away." Su Ching realized that Caixia had been at the door the whole time. She had overheard the conversation just now, and her cheeks couldn't help but turn red again. Jun Wuxian lowered his eyes and saw that her fair cheeks were red again. He couldn't help but tease, "Why are you blushing again?" Su Ching subconsciously touched her face. She also found that every time she was with Jun Wuxian, she blushed easily, just like what was written in the storybook. Is this probably what a little girl in love looks like in the storybook? She looked up at Jun Wuxian, her eyes full of joy. The storybook did not lie to her. A relationship between two people who love each other will make people happy and excited, full of expectations. Thinking of what she did in the first few months after entering the palace, it was simply too much to bear. The point is that there is no point in competing for favor, let alone making her happy. Instead, it makes things difficult every day. So she must not let Jun Wuxian know how stupid she was before. Seeing her staring at him without saying anything, Jun Wuxian raised his hand and hit her forehead with a fan. "What are you thinking about?" Su Ching shook her head guiltily, "Nothing." Jun Wuxian looked at her guilty face, put away the folding fan, stretched out his arms to hug her slender waist, and closed the distance between them. "Are you hiding something from me?" Su Ching instinctively stretched out her hands and pressed them on his chest, meeting the pair of eyes with a faint smile, and felt even more guilty. "No, what can I hide from you?" Jun Wuxian crossed his legs and leaned lazily on the back of the chair. His arm seemed to be weakly hugging Su Ching. In fact, she knew better than anyone how tightly Jun Wuxian held her. Jun Wuxian looked at her with his beautiful eyes. "Then why are you so nervous?" Su Ching pretended to be calm and replied, "I'm not nervous, you are overthinking." "Yeah. Of course." Jun Wuxian's eyes fell on her pink lips. "Come closer." "What's wrong?" Su Ching came over with doubts, making the already very close distance even closer. She raised her head and looked at the man close at hand, and slowly leaned towards her until her lips felt warm. After being stunned for a while, she realized that Jun Wuxian was kissing her. Is this the legendary kiss? It was the first time that Su Ching and Jun Wuxian were in love. She knew nothing about these things before. Ever since she read the book given by Shen Shuwei, she had been full of fantasies about the feeling of being in love and the actions between lovers. Every time I saw various descriptions of the male and female protagonists kissing in picture books, Su Ching, who had never experienced it before, was full of curiosity. Now that I have experienced it myself, I don't know how to react. She suddenly remembered that there was something in the storybook about how the heroine responded. Just when Su Ching was thinking about how to respond, Jun Wuxian stepped away. Su Ching looked at Jun Wuxian blankly. She had already thought about her response, but he actually stopped. Although it's not a fleeting kiss, it's not like what's described in the storybook. At this time, Su Ching was filled with regrets. After finally kissing for the first time, she was screwed up by herself. Su Ching thought that Jun Wuxian stopped because of her own reasons. Jun Wuxian was afraid of scaring Su Ching, so he tried it briefly. It felt better than he imagined. He lowered his eyes at Su Ching with unfinished thoughts, and saw that she was frowning in annoyance. He thought that Su Ching's face would turn red with embarrassment, but the result was different from what he imagined. "What's your expression?" When Su Ching met those auspicious phoenix eyes, she blushed and explained in a low voice, "This is my first time, I'm not very good at it." In fact, she wanted to say that if you don't have experience, you will inevitably not know how to do it, so don't dislike her. Jun Wuxian couldn't help laughing when he heard this. He really couldn't hold it back. Su Ching was already embarrassed, but seeing him laughing out loud, she said coquettishly, "Why are you laughing?" Jun Wuxian suppressed his laughter and said, "Why are you so funny?" Su Ching blushed and threw herself into his arms. "I'm serious, You can't laugh at me. Jun Wuxian looked down at the person in his arms, holding back his laughter and said, okay, okay, I won't laugh. But she was still smiling where she couldn't see her. Why didn't she find her so funny before? Su Qingqing raised her head and found Jun Wuxian covering his mouth with a fan and snickering. He didn't know whether it was from embarrassment or anger, but his cheeks turned even redder. When Jun Wuxian saw her angrily turning her head away from him, he put away the folding fan and coaxed in a gentle voice, okay, I'm not laughing at you, I just think you're funny. Su Qingqing said angrily, isn't that the same meaning? Of course I don't mean the same thing. Jun Wuxian hugged her into his arms again, lowered his head to her ear, and said in an ambiguous tone, it feels pretty good. The warm breath and the ambiguous voice reached her ears. Su Qingqing's cheeks turned red again, and she lay shyly in his arms, feeling as sweet as honey. Jun Wuxian opened the folding fan again and fanned the two of them. He looked at the person lying in his arms. Although he couldn't see her face, he could probably guess that her face must have turned red again. I thought it would be more interesting to find Shen Shuwei. The next day, at the entrance of the general's mansion. The general's wife looked at her daughter with some reluctance, just like when her daughter clamored to enter the palace, tears flowed down her face. General Su saw his wife shed tears and shouted, why are you crying? It's not like you won't come back. The general's wife curled her lips and said, am I forced to give up? General Su snorted. When Su Qingqing saw her mother crying so sadly, she advised, Mom, please don't cry. Xian and I will get married at the end of the year, and we will have to leave home sooner or later. The general's wife cried even harder when she heard this, you kid, you forgot your mother when you have a fiancé. Su Qingqing stepped forward and took her mother's arm, and said coquettishly, how could it be possible? My daughter will never forget her mother. The general's wife wiped away her tears and said, Qingqing, do you remember to write to me? Su Qingqing smiled and said, don't worry, mother, I will write a letter to say you are safe. Jun Wuxian walked over and was now next to Su Qingqing. General Su has always loved his daughter, and after the two experiences, he felt even more distressed. He looked at his future son-in-law and warned, Qingqing has been pampered since she was a child. She has never suffered hardships. Please be more considerate of her on the road, my dear son-in-law. Jun Wuxian said, don't worry, father-in-law and mother-in-law, I will take good care of her. The general's wife wiped her tears and said, my dear son-in-law, thank you for your troubles. Jun Wuxian said, it's my duty to take good care of her. Mother-in-law doesn't need to worry. From the days General Su has spent with Jun Wuxian, it can be seen that he is a very responsible man, otherwise he would not have entrusted his daughter to him so easily. It's getting late. You should hit the road early and go back early. Jun Wuxian and Su Qingqing said goodbye to General Su and his wife, got into the carriage, and set out on the road to find Shen Shuwei. Asterisk. Shen Shuwei was taking a nap when a loud noise suddenly came from outside the dormitory, which scared her so much that she almost rolled off the bed. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked out the window in confusion, and saw the furry face of Tigress pressed against the window, its eyes evasive, like a child who had done something wrong. Shen Shuwei thought of the loud noise just now and immediately got up from the bed. When she came out of the dormitory, she saw the tigress lying motionless on the ground. He didn't even dare to look at her, feeling very guilty. Miao Shuetuan meowed slightly towards Shen Shu. Shen Shuwei looked at the snowball and saw it running towards the rockery. She followed it curiously, but before she walked in, she saw that the head of the rockery was gone. No wonder the sound was so loud just now that it scared her awake. She turned to look at the tigan, only to see its huge head lowered without even a sound. Shuetuan jumped twice in front of the tigress and said, meow, as if he was gloating about his misfortune. Just now, the snowball got into the rockery. Tigress wanted to chase the snowball, but it forgot its huge body and just got in. The head of the rockery was knocked off by it. Shen Shuwei shortened the hair on the Tigan's body, making it smaller than before, but it was still tall and strong. Shen Shuwei didn't care that the rockery's head was missing. When he saw that the tigress looked like a child who had done something wrong, he couldn't help but laugh. Sure enough, smart animals are spiritual and know that they have done something wrong. She touched the Tigan's big head and said, "Okay, be careful next time and don't run away. Let's be more elegant. Do you understand?" The tiger-lion beast raised its head, its eyes as big as copper bells shining brightly, and stood up excitedly. Shen Shuwei changed the topic and said, "Okay, let's go and restore the rockery to its original position." The Tigan wanted to spin around in circles in excitement, but was told to return to its original position and immediately lowered its head. "I've finished my afternoon tea, and you're not allowed to eat until you've finished it." Shen Chu snorted slightly, turned around and walked into the dormitory. Xue Tuan bounced a few times, snorted at the tigress, and followed Shen Shuwei in with a swagger. Kiao circled around tigress's head several times and landed on the rockery, shouting happily, as if watching the fun. Although Tigraman is dissatisfied with Iroha and Yuki-dan for seeing its joke, the mission arranged by Xiaju must be completed. It walked over with strong limbs, looked at the rockery, stretched out its claws and pushed, but it crushed the flowers and plants aside. Kiao flapped her wings and screamed happily, as if to say, "I'm so stupid, I'm so stupid." Tigraman roared at Kiao, who was so frightened that Kiao hurriedly flew into the dormitory. No one disturbed him, so Tigress finally thought of a way to move the rockery back. When Shen Shuwei came out of the dormitory after having afternoon tea, he was stunned when he saw the tiger and lion holding the head of the rockery and placing it on the rockery. Tigan actually knows how to stand up. Do you still know how to hold things? At this time, Bia Palace. A look of surprise flashed in Wu Tan's eyes. "You said Xiaju came back. When did he come back?" "Well, I was in the palace 2 days ago. I heard that the tiger, lion, and beast recognized her as the princess of Juyue. She should be inseparable." Yayuchen was a little excited. When he looked at Wu Tan, his eyes were filled with emotion. Expect. Wu Tan subconsciously thought of Shen Shuwei. Xiao Jinyan said he had found her, but she didn't come back. Could it be because she went to the palace? Seeing Wu Tan's expression, Yayuchen came over with a curious look on his face and asked him, "She's back. Are you sure you don't want to go back to the palace to take a look? And get your own things back, by the way. Good night, Spicy. Please support with monthly votes and recommendation votes. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 562. Wuyutan ignored Yayuchen's expectant look. "Have you seen her?" "No, I informed you as soon as I got the news, and I haven't had time to go to the palace to see her." Yayuchen paused here, "But I do plan to go to the palace to see Princess Juyue. What has she been through after being missing for so long?" Wuyutan was not sure if the Princess Juyue in the palace was Shen Shuwei. If it was Shen Shuwei, did she remember it? Yayuchen thought Wuyutan would be ecstatic to hear the news about Princess Juyue, but he was surprised that Wuyutan was surprisingly calm. "What's that expression on your face? Aren't you curious about what she's been through over the years? Don't you want to go back and see her? Do you really want everyone to think you're dead? If Wuyutan can even let go of Princess Juyue, let alone take back what belongs to him." Wu Tan looked at the aggressive Yayuchen calmly. "I'll think about it again." Yayuchen looked at him with an indifferent look, and couldn't help but get anxious, almost pointing at his forehead and scolding, "What else do you want? Don't you care about Princess Juyue the most? She's back, but you're a coward." For Yayuchen's excited reaction, Wu Tan still looked indifferent. "I'm a monk now." Yayuchen stared at Wu Tan for a long time, and had to admit that he had changed a lot over the years, and he almost didn't recognize him. He kindly reminded, "Then don't forget Yuxi's thoughts, he is the prince now." When mentioning Yuxi, Wu Tan's calm eyes had a ripple. He looked at Yuchen quietly, as if thinking. Yuchen didn't know what Wu Tan was thinking, but seeing that he didn't care, he wanted to take off his cassock and let him be a monk. In the dead of night, Xiao Jinyan was worried that Shen Shuwei would sneak into the palace again. As soon as he arrived at Wuyu Palace, he sensed the danger. He tiptoed to the door of the bedroom and saw a large shadow at the door. With the help of the palace lantern above his head, he vaguely saw a giant, tiger, lion. The night was too dark, and it looked a bit like a tiger or a lion, but it was much larger than the lions and tigers he had seen. Who put a beast at Xiaoju's door? What if she was scared? Thinking of this, Xiao Jinyan couldn't wait to go in and see her, but the beast was too big and guarded the door. Going in through the window was afraid that it would be alarmed. Xiao Jinyan estimated the distance to the window and tried to climb in through the window at the fastest speed before the beast discovered him. After waiting for a long time, Xiao Jinyan saw the right opportunity and ran quickly towards the window. The tiger-lion beast, which was originally lying motionless, suddenly raised its head, and its big eyes like copper bells glowed green in the night. Xiao Jinyan, who had just run over, saw it and was frightened. Who wouldn't be nervous with a beast of this size? Just as Xiao Jinyan rushed over, the tiger-lion beast suddenly stood up with fierce eyes. Xiao Jinyan had to stop, because he was afraid that if he didn't stop, the beast in front of him would suddenly go crazy and attract the guards. Looking at the window that was only a few feet away, it would be better if it was faster. The beast in front of him didn't move, and Xiao Jinyan didn't dare to move. After a stalemate of a cup of tea, Xiao Jinyan became a little impatient. He finally sneaked into the palace, but was stopped by the beast outside the door. Just when Xiao Jinyan was impatient, the tiger-lion beast moved and walked over with strong limbs. I don't know if it was an illusion, but Xiao Jinyan felt the ground tremble. Xiao Jinyan calmly put his hand into his sleeve. In order to be on the safe side, he carried a dagger on his body, and he could only take action when the beast approached. It was only a few steps away, and the beast's strong limbs came over in a short while. The moment he approached, Xiao Jinyan felt the pressure of the beast's height, as well as the beast's own wildness and ferocity. The tiger-lion beast approached Xiao Jinyan and sniffed, and felt something was wrong, so he sniffed again. Xiao Jinyan held his breath, watching the beast as if it was smelling his body. The distance was too close, and he could feel the beast's whiskers touching his cheek, which was a little painful like a needle. I don't know what this beast is doing. The tiger-lion beast sniffed for a long time, snorted with its nose, and then barked twice. Xiao Jinyan. Shen Shuwei, who was about to fall asleep, suddenly heard the tiger-lion beast's cry and opened her eyes suddenly. Could the tiger-lion beast cause trouble again? The tiger-lion beast had been in Wuyu Palace for less than 2 days, and had done 2 earth-shattering things. The first was to knock the head of the rockery away, and the second was to squeeze the door of the side hall because it wanted to come in too. Fortunately, it was the side hall door. If the bedroom door was squeezed, she would have to sleep in the open-air bed tonight. In one day, people from the Ministry of Internal Affairs came twice. Shen Shuwei hurriedly got up from the bed, trotted to the door and opened it, and saw the tiger-lion beast's tail swaying in front of her. She took a few steps forward, patted the tiger-lion beast's butt, and said angrily, "You don't sleep at night, do you want to go to heaven?" The tiger-lion beast wowed and turned to look over. Xiao Jinyan heard Xiaoju's voice and called out, "Xiaoju! Hey!" Xiao Jinyan's voice. Shen Shuwei looked outside. "Jinyan. I'm here." Xiao Jinyan walked from outside to the door. Shen Shuwei saw Xiao Jinyan's happy eyebrows curved, and threw herself into Xiao Jinyan's arms. "Jinyan." Xiao Jinyan saw that Shen Shuwei was only wearing a piece of obscene clothing, frowned and took her into his arms, then strode in and closed the door. The Tigan looked at the closed door and snorted dissatisfiedly, but it didn't dare to break in because it had already broken one door. If it broke another door, Xiaju would be angry. It suddenly felt disgusted that it was too strong, and it could still get in before. Xiao Jinyan hugged her and strode inside. Why did you run out without putting on any clothes? Shen Chuwei glanced down at his clothes, raised his head and explained, I was too anxious, thinking that there was no man here, so I came out like this. However, the tiger and lion were guarding the door, and no one else dared to approach. Xiao Jinyan came to the bedside, put her on the bed, and asked doubtfully, is that just a tiger or lion at the door? Why haven't I heard of it? I haven't heard of it either. I heard that the tiger lion was raised by Princess Juyu since she was a child, that is Feng Wuyu. The tiger lion is just like Swichuan, very spiritual and very smart. Shen Chuwei said, leaning close to Xiao Jinyan's ear and whispering, yesterday, I almost had my secret exposed, but fortunately, I have always been lucky, and I happen to have special skills, so there was no danger. Xiao Jinyan became very nervous when he heard that the secret was exposed. He pretended to be Princess Juyu, and the crime of deceiving the emperor was a capital crime. What happened? Shen Chuwei told Xiao Jinyan what happened yesterday one by one. That's probably it, but the princess is injured and will not come to Wuyu Palace in the past 2 days. Xiao Jinyan's eyes flashed with surprise. Can you understand animals? Shen Chu said slightly, it doesn't count, but I can understand what they want to express from their eyes. Xiao Jinyan was a little shocked. Being able to read the thoughts of animals was already very powerful. How could ordinary people do this? Why haven't you told me about it before? Shen Chuwei looked innocent, you didn't even ask. Xiao Jinyan recalled that during this period, he had indeed not asked any relevant questions. Shen Chuwei held his hand and said with a smile, Jinyan, don't look at the tiger and lion beast as ferocious. It's actually quite cute. Xiao Jinyan's mouth twitched, is it cute? I didn't see it. When he came here just now, he was extremely nervous. Firstly, he was afraid of fighting with the tiger and lion, and secondly, he was afraid of being discovered. Shen Chuwei happily shared the interesting story about Tigress coming to Wushao Palace, and couldn't help but laugh after speaking. If Shen Chuwei hadn't said anything, it would be hard for Xiao Jinyan to imagine that such a big man could behave in such a cute way. Shen Chuwei stayed in the palace, had good food and drinks, and was not bored with the presence of Caiu, snow dumplings, and tigers, lions, and beasts. Even though Xiao Jinyan was not around, she missed him. Jinyan, are you a little anxious? Rather than being anxious to find the Imperial Master, Xiao Jinyan is most concerned about her comfort now. I'm just a little worried about you. Shen Chu said softly, don't worry about me. I'm fine here. I just don't know if the Imperial Master is on his way back now. How long will it take to get back? The princess you are talking about is obviously targeting you. If she can think of using a Tigan this time, I'm not sure what she will do next time. You are unfamiliar with the place here and are surrounded by dangers. Xiao Jinyan said this and made a decision, tonight, you and I will leave the palace. When the Imperial Master comes back, we will go find him. Xiao Jinyan is a man of action, so he picked up the clothes and put them on for her. Shen Chuwei put her arms around Xiao Jinyan's neck, and at the same time stopped her from dressing herself. We have already reached this point. If you let me leave the palace, won't you fail in your work? The Imperial Master is here. Although I am the fake Princess Juyu, the Imperial Master will definitely give me a face. Let him give it to you when the time comes. See, isn't it a matter of course? Otherwise, in what capacity should we ask the National Master to help? At this point, Shen Chuwei said in a more serious tone, besides, I'm not that easy to bully. I have Xuetuan, and Tigress can help me no matter what happens. Sichuan Xiao Jinyan knew that, as for the tiger and lion beast, he had only been exposed to it for 2 days. If the real Princess Juyu came back, would he still protect her? The answer is negative. It's easy to hide from an open gun, but it's hard to guard against a hidden arrow. Do you understand? I'm not a 3-year-old child. Besides, Mr. Lu told me my fortune and said that I would live a long life and be rich. Shen Shuwei emphasized the last sentence. She has always had good luck. Xiao Jinyan sighed helplessly. I just don't worry about you being alone in this deep palace. This is not the first time I have experienced this. I am familiar with the experience of staying in the deep palace. Shen Chu smiled slightly. She had just passed through, but the concubine who was punished was also in the inner courtyard of the deep palace. It was much harder than it is now. Xiao Jinyan knew what she meant. Although he became a legend, it was more or less luck. You are just lucky. Don't be afraid of 10,000, just be afraid of the unexpected. Shen Chu said slightly, you are right, I am lucky. My luck is never bad. Xiao Jinyan snorted and was non-committal. I've heard a lot of rumors about the Imperial Master in the past 2 days. Shen Shuwei became interested when he heard the words, what kind of person is the Imperial Master? Is he easy to talk to? I heard that the Imperial Preceptor is very cold-blooded and the Emperor can't even control him. Do you think he is easy to talk to? Xiao Jinyan raised his eyebrows and looked at her. The implication was obvious. Even if the Imperial Preceptor has that ability, he may be difficult to recruit. Move. The Emperor doesn't even give her face. Shen Shuwei was a little surprised. I wanted to inquire about some things about the Imperial Master here, and found that the maids here are all new recruits, and they know nothing about the Imperial Master and Princess Juyu. Xiao Jinyan asked, do you want to stay here? Shen Shuwei said firmly, of course, you see, the Emperor's face is not given by the State Master. If you leave the palace, you won't even have the chance to see the State Master. I still look forward to your memory recovery, and then we will go back to Daxia together. Shen Shuwei never thought that one day she would be like Chengzi, speaking earnestly. She now deeply understands Chengzi's difficulties. What can Xiao Jinyan say? She insisted, and he would naturally support her. Even if her identity was exposed that day, he would still be there. After thinking it through, she stopped struggling. The two sat side by side for a while, and Shen Shuwei raised her head and asked, are you going back now? Before they had not separated, Xiao Jinyan didn't think there was anything wrong. Now they had been separated for 2 days, he found it very uneasy. Not going back. The words were so clear, Shen Shuwei certainly understood what he meant and wanted to stay overnight. She naturally had no objection. Fortunately, there were tiger-lion beasts guarding the door, and the maids in the palace didn't dare to approach, so she didn't worry about being discovered. Xiao Jinyan began to undress. He naturally knew how bold his decision was, but it was within his limits. Shen Shuwei lay in Xiao Jinyan's arms. She was so excited that she was not sleepy. The hand on Xiao Jinyan's chest touched her intentionally or unintentionally. Xiao Jinyan's breath was a little unstable. When he first came, he had a mind when he saw her wearing this dress. Now that restless hand was wanton, he couldn't ignore it. He lowered his head and asked hoarsely, can't sleep? You are a little excited when you suddenly come. And fell asleep in a while. It was just that Xiao Jinyan didn't give him a chance to say the second half of the sentence, and was blocked. It was already early morning when Shen Shuwei fell asleep. Xiao Jinyan looked at the sky, and then at the sleeping person in his arms. Although he was reluctant to leave, he still got up and started to put on clothes, and then left quietly. The tiger-lion beast at the door opened his eyes and saw a figure flying out. Shen Shuwei slept until the sun was high in the sky. If the prince hadn't come, she would probably have slept until noon. The prince came to take her to continue to familiarize herself with the environment in the palace. After all, she was going to live there permanently. Yuxi brought a lot of delicious food when he came, most of which were Shen Shui's favorites. She accepted all the food with some embarrassment. "Prince, you are too polite." Yuxi smiled and said, "What's the big deal? We used to be like this, as long as you like it." Shen Shui lowered her head guiltily, looking at a pile of pastries, and felt even more guilty. Shen Shui followed Yuxi with her soft legs. She walked fast and slow, so slowly that Yuxi couldn't help but worry. "Xiaju, are you feeling unwell?" Shen Shui smiled and said, "I didn't rest well last night, and I feel a little weak." Yuxi said anxiously, "In that case, let's go back. When you are better, it won't be too late to get familiar with it." Shen Shui secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Yuxi had this awareness. If she changed to a straight man, he would probably continue to take her around. Enyu came over with the help of her maid, and saw Princess Juyu. Although she didn't like her, she didn't forget her business. "Brother Crown Prince, the third brother is back. Good night, babies. Please support me with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 563. Chapter 563. The master of the imperial household is coming back. Seeing an acquaintance is scarier than seeing a ghost. Yuxi suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Is the third brother back? He turned his head to look at Enyu, strode over, and asked, "What did you say just now?" Enyu had been recovering from her injuries for 2 days. Her leg injury was a bit serious. She could not walk independently and needed the support of a maid. She glanced at Princess Juyu not far away and whispered, "Brother Crown Prince, I just got the news that the third brother is back and he is now in the capital." Yuxi frowned and asked, "Is the news accurate?" Enyu said, "The news came from the fifth brother. He has always been good friends with the third brother. What he said should be true. Why did he come back suddenly? Is it because—" Yuxi turned around and looked at Princess Juyu. "Because of her?" Shen Shui looked at the actions of the two people in front of him with a puzzled look on his face. They were whispering to each other, and he didn't know what they were talking about. She yawned and wanted to go back to sleep. Just when Shen Shui had this thought, Yuxi came over. "Xiaju, I had something to do just now, do you mind?" Yuxi's voice was very gentle. Even if she minded, she didn't mind, not to mention that she didn't mind at all. "It doesn't matter, if the prince is busy, go ahead and do it, don't worry about me." Shen Shui smiled, but added in her heart, "Really don't worry about me, it doesn't matter if you are familiar with the environment, anyway, you don't live here all the time." Yuxi smiled when he heard it. "Xiaju is so considerate, then you take a rest first, I will take you out for a walk in the afternoon." Shen Shui smiled and nodded, then waited to see Yuxi off. As a result, she heard Yuxi say, "Then I'll take you back first." Shen Shui glanced at the palace gate of Wu Palace not far away. It was only a 10-second journey, so why send it? She retracted her gaze. "I'm sorry to bother you, Prince." Yuxi said gently, "No, let's go." Okay. Shen Shui took small steps with her sore legs, walking slowly. After Yuxi sent her back to Wu Palace, he left after giving her a few instructions. Enyu didn't go to find Princess Juyu because her leg injury hadn't healed. Anyway, she didn't believe that Princess Juyu was real. Shen Shui went back to the bedroom and took a nap. When she woke up, it was lunchtime. The maids brought the food to the table one by one and stepped aside to wait. Shen Shuwei saw the table full of delicious food, so she picked up the chopsticks and started eating. Food is for enjoyment, so when she eats, she will be single-minded and focused. The tiger-lion beast had just finished eating a pot of meat, and its two huge forelimbs were lying on the doorsill, with its big head lying on its forelimbs, and its big eyes like copper bells stared at Xiaoju without blinking. I have been thinking about going in for more than a day or two, but because of its huge size, it would cause devastating damage if I went in. The well-fed Sichuan was no longer lying down, shaking his round body, walking back and forth in front of the tiger-lion beast, very proud and arrogant. The tiger-lion beast snorted, obviously unhappy. Yuxi said he would come in the afternoon and he really came. Shen Shuwei was planning to take a nap, but because of Yuxi's arrival, she could only straighten her clothes to receive him. When she saw Yuxi carrying two large oil paper bags, her eyes lit up for a moment, because she smelled the smell of stinky tofu. I just went out of the palace and bought some food. See if they are all your favorites. Yuxi smiled and put the things on the table, then opened them one by one. Shen Shuwei stretched her neck to take a few glances, and saw the stinky tofu. She was a little greedy after not eating it for 3 days. Although it was not long after lunch, her stomach could still hold a bowl of stinky tofu. The prince actually bought stinky tofu. Yuxi opened the oil paper package, and the stinky smell was unbearable. He held his breath and handed the stinky tofu to her, smiling and saying, "You loved to eat stinky tofu when you were a child, so I bought some. It's still hot, eat it while it's hot." "Then I won't be polite." Shen Shuwei held the small bowl and began to eat the bamboo sticks. Yuxi saw the tiger-lion beast in the distance, lying on the arch bridge, playing with the fish in the water. He smiled and took several steps forward, then took 2 quick breaths. He looked at Princess Juyu, who was eating stinky tofu, and didn't know why she liked to eat such a stinky thing. "The tiger-lion beast has been much better when he was with you. He often got angry before." Really, Shen Shuwei was eating stinky tofu and looked up at the arch bridge. She saw the tiger-lion beast lying on the arch bridge with a depressed face. It was probably still depressed that it couldn't enter the house. It's so big, and it would be devastating if it moved a little. It's no wonder she didn't let it in. At this time, the maid walked in with small steps, lowered her eyebrows and nodded, "Princess, King Biu is here." Shen Shuwei's eyes flashed with doubt. "Who is King Biu?" Yuxi frowned when he heard that King Biu was coming. What was he doing here? Just when Shen Shuwei was curious about who King Biu was, Yuchen strode in. Shen Shuwei had just taken a bite of stinky tofu when she saw a man in a purple robe walking in. He wore a purple gold crown on his head, had a handsome face, and was full of nobility. You don't need to ask to know that he is King Biu. When Yuchen came in, he stepped forward to greet him, "Your Highness the Crown Prince." Yuxi saw Yuchen and asked with a smile, "How did King Biu have time to come to the palace?" Yuchen looked at Yuxi with a smile, "I heard that Princess Juyu is back, so I naturally have to go to the palace to see how much taller she has grown." Yuxi did not comment. Yuchen then looked at the girl who was eating stinky tofu. He smelled the smell of stinky tofu as soon as he came in. It was really unpleasant. The girl in front of him had a pair of extremely beautiful eyes, flickering like the brightest stars in the night sky, and her facial features were impeccable. Her skin was as white as snow, and she looked even more delicate in pink clothes. Although I haven't seen her for many years, she still has the shadow of her childhood. Yuchen smiled and said, "Xiaju, I haven't seen you for so many years. You have grown a lot taller." Shen Shuwei smiled awkwardly but politely, "Of course, you can't not grow taller, right?" "That's true." Yuchen looked at the stinky tofu in her hand, covered his mouth and nose and joked, "After so many years, you still like to eat stinky tofu. It's so stinky, how can you eat it?" It just smells stinky, but it tastes especially delicious. You haven't tried it? When you eat it, you will know how delicious it is, Shen Shuwei said, picked up a piece of stinky tofu and put it in her mouth, eating it very fragrantly. I can't eat it, Ye Yuchen thought of Wu Tan, who was the one who ate the stinky tofu without changing his expression. He smiled and said, but someone can eat with you. Shen Shuwei ate the stinky tofu and asked casually, who is it? Ye Yuchen glanced at Ye Yuxi, and Ye Yuxi happened to look over. The former had a mocking look in his eyes, and the latter was a little nervous. He kept it a secret, you will know when he enters the palace. Shen Shuwei ate the stinky tofu and looked at Ye Yuchen's mysterious face. She didn't ask any more questions. No matter who it was, she definitely didn't know him. Although Ye Yuchen didn't say it clearly, Ye Yuxi guessed who the person he was talking about was. It seems that the news is true and he is really back. Ye Yuchen looked at the little girl who grew up with him, and couldn't help but think of a picture in his mind, that is, a cute and soft foodie. Whoever gives her delicious food, she will smile sweetly. Ye Yuchen didn't stay long and left Wu Palace. As for whether Wu Tan would return to the palace, he also made a bet that he would return to the palace because of Xiaju. Not long after Ye Yuchen left, Ye Yuxi also left. When Ye Haoding came to visit Xiaju, she had just gotten up, and it was the maid who came in to wake her up. How could Shen Shuwei know that Ye Haoding, who was busy with affairs, would come to see her early in the morning? She hurriedly put on her clothes, washed up, and walked out. Seeing Ye Haoding sitting at the table, he must have been waiting for a while. Shen Shuwei walked over a little flattered, Your Majesty, you are busy with affairs and still take time to come to see me. It should be the juniors who come to see you. Ye Haoding laughed heartily, I haven't seen you for 2 days, so I came to see you. Are you used to living here? Shen Shuwei praised generously, it's pretty good, eat well, dress well, and live well naturally. Ye Haoding smiled and nodded, sure enough, I have lived here since I was a child. Even if I have been away for so long, I still like it. At this time, the maid brought the breakfast, placed it on the dining table, and then retreated. Shen Shuwei looked at the breakfast in front of her, and before she started eating, she asked Ye Haoding, has the emperor eaten yet? Ye Haoding said, I have already eaten. Then I'll eat. Shen Shuwei couldn't wait to hold the chopsticks tightly, picked up a dumpling and put it into her mouth and took a bite. It was meat-filled and delicious. Ye Haoding sat there and watched her eat. Xiaju loved eating since she was a child. She said that she might be unhappy when she didn't eat, but she was definitely happy when she ate, and she might even be twice as happy. Looking at her satisfied face every time she ate, she knew that she was really twice as happy. Shen Shuwei found that Ye Haoding had been staring at her. Although Ye Haoding had never admitted or denied that Feng Wu was his daughter, she found that Ye Haoding was very good to Feng Wu. It's just that now, she shouldn't care about this. After Shen Shuwei finished her breakfast, the palace maids cleared the bowls and chopsticks. She didn't forget the business either. She had been in the palace for 4 days. Although it wasn't long, she didn't allow anyone to come to eat and drink. She thought about the wording, Your Majesty, you said last time that you wanted the Imperial Master to come back to see, when will he come back? Ye Haoding was not curious about her sudden question about the Imperial Master, but smiled and explained, the Imperial Master has not lived in the capital for many years, but has been living in the mountains. There is a formation on the mountain, and ordinary people can't go up. It should be soon. Oh, Shen Shuwei nodded, and then asked curiously, Your Majesty, is the Imperial Master very powerful? Ye Haoding laughed out loud, of course, otherwise how could it be the Imperial Master? Shen Shuwei was a little happy in her heart. The Imperial Master was so powerful, so Xiao Jinyan had a greater chance of recovering his memory. She really wanted the Imperial Master to come back soon. Your Majesty, I think so too. What she thought in her heart was that the more powerful the imperial master was, the greater the hope. Yahouding laughed out loud again. Is there anything you want to eat? You can tell me, I will ask someone to buy it. Shen Shuwei thought of Xiao Jinyan and Wu Tan, and wanted to take the opportunity to go out of the palace to see them so that they could rest assured. Your Majesty, I want to go out of the palace to buy it myself. Yahouding only thought about it for a moment and nodded in agreement, which was enough to show how much he doted on Xiaju. Okay, I'll send some people to protect you. No need to do those fake things, just let a palace maid follow you. Shen Shuwei leaned close to Yahouding's ear and whispered, too many people, too conspicuous. If it were someone else, they would naturally not dare to refuse the meaning of Yahouding's words, let alone speak so unworthy of their status. This is probably one of the reasons why Yahouding likes Xiaju. Okay, I'll listen to you. Then, Yahouding took out a token and handed it to her. With this token, you can leave the palace at will. Thank you, Your Majesty. Shen Shuwei happily took it and touched the token. It was golden. I wonder if it was pure gold? Shen Shuwei left the palace with a maid as she wished. After leaving the palace, Shen Shuwei bought a lot of food along the way, and the maid was responsible for carrying it. After buying enough, Shen Shuwei took the maid to make sweet soup, and then found an excuse to leave. Before leaving, she specifically told the maid not to run around. Then she happily went to find Xiao Jinyan. Unfortunately, Shen Shuwei saw Xiao Jinyan coming out of the tea house halfway through her walk, and the two saw each other at first sight. She ran over, husband. Xiao Jinyan was a little surprised when he saw her. Xiaoju, why did you leave the palace? Shen Chu smiled with curved eyebrows. I said I went out of the palace to buy food, and the emperor agreed. Xiao Jinyan was even more surprised after hearing this. Didn't he doubt it? I will go back later. He shouldn't doubt it. Shen Shuwei took his arm and came to a corner where no one was. Xiao Jinyan let her pull him, looked back, and felt relieved when he didn't find anyone following him. Husband, I asked the emperor. He said that the national teacher is very powerful. When to come back depends on luck. It will be soon, and it won't be soon. Shen Shuwei repeated Yahouding's words again. Xiao Jinyan was calm at this time. It seems that half of the rumors are true. Shen Shuwei thought of Wu Tan, and asked, Husband, Wu Tan should know that I am safe now, right? If it were anyone, they would be unhappy when their wife mentioned other men, even if the other party was a monk. Xiao Jinyan was no exception. I already know, Shen Shuwei said. That's good. I was afraid that he would worry. Xiao Jinyan didn't want to continue this topic. He looked down at her and asked, Do you want to go back to the inn? Shen Shuwei shook her head. No, I'm going back to the palace. Although Xiao Jinyan was reluctant, he knew that it was not easy for her to come out. Shen Shuwei waved and ran away. Xiao Jinyan stood there and looked at Shen Shuwei's back for a long time. It was not a solution to continue like this. Back in Wu Palace, Shen Shuwei took out today's spoils, all of which were food. She took out a box of cakes and planned to give it to Yahouding to try. After coming out of the bedroom, Shen Shuwei walked up the arch bridge with a cheerful step and walked out of Wu Palace. Shen Shuwei still remembered the way after going to the imperial study last time. After walking for a while, when they were about to reach the imperial study, Shen Shuwei saw King Biu coming out of the imperial study, and her eyes fell on the man who was walking with King Biu. She couldn't help but open her eyes wide, and actually saw him here. Good night, babies. Please support me with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 564. Shen Shuwei thought she had seen it wrong, rubbed her eyes and looked twice more, and found that she was not wrong. It was him. She never dreamed that she would meet an acquaintance here, and such an acquaintance. For the first time, she lamented that she had bad luck. In fact, it was not an acquaintance, she had met him 2 or 3 times. Those 2 or 3 times were enough to scare her so that she could not sleep well for 2 nights. But, why is the masked man here? The man who was traveling with Yayuchin wore a black brocade robe, with a dark blue middle coat inside, and his long black hair was tied up by a jade crown. Under the backlight, the mask on his cheek seemed to be coated with a layer of silver light. Even from such a distance, you can feel his nobleness and sinister temperament. Seeing them coming over here, Shen Shuwei immediately hid behind the tree, holding her breath, and never found her, otherwise it would be exposed. Yayuchin said, I am still very happy that you can come back. Masked man, is this what you expect? Of course, but... Yayuchin stared at him for a long time. Shen Shuwei hugged the cake tightly in her arms and took a sneak peek. Seeing Yayuchin and the masked man walking away, she breathed a sigh of relief. She patted her chest as if to comfort him, I was scared to death. After the others walked further away, she walked out from behind the tree and took a look from a distance. She could only see a corner of the masked man, and her sense of security gradually returned. What is the identity of the masked man? How could he enter the imperial study? Shen Shuwei turned around and went to the imperial study with doubts. The idle eunuch at the door had met several times and was familiar with her. He let her in after telling her to go in. Yahouding was sitting in front of the dragon case, flipping through the memorials. When he saw Xiaju coming in, he put down the memorials in his hand and looked at her with a smile. Xiaju, come here. Shen Shuwei walked over with the cake, put it in front of Yahouding, and said with a smile, Your Majesty, I just came back from outside the palace. This is the cake I brought for you. It is moderately sweet. Do you like it? Yahouding looked at the cake in front of him, opened the box, and took out the cake inside. It didn't look as exquisite as the ones in the palace, but it didn't look bad. He smiled and looked up at Xiaju. It's hard for you to be so thoughtful. Every time you go out of the palace, you will bring me food. Shen Shuwei naturally knew that Yahouding was talking about Fengwu, so her decision to buy cakes was a coincidence. Yahouding lowered his head and picked up a piece of cake, handed it to his mouth and took a bite. It melted in his mouth and was moderately sweet. For someone like him who doesn't like to eat too sweet, it is still very appetizing. He smiled and said, Xiaju, this cake tastes good. Eunuch Xian brought 2 cups of tea, one in front of the emperor and one in front of Princess Juyu. Shen Shuwei was a little thirsty after walking all the way, but she was a little embarrassed to drink first. Looking at Yahouding who was eating cakes, she smiled and reminded, Your Majesty, drink some tea. Yahouding took a look at the tea. Cakes and tea are a perfect match. He smiled and nodded, okay. As he said that, he took the teacup to his lips, blew it, and took a sip. Shen Shuwei then smiled and took the teacup to his lips, blew it, and took several sips. The cakes were served, the tea was drunk, and Shen Shuwei waved and left. Yahouding ate cakes and watched Xiaju disappear at the door of the imperial study. He originally wanted to tell her that Honor was back, but he thought that she didn't remember anything, and she wouldn't know it even if he told her, so it was better to let Honor tell her herself. He sighed and continued to eat cakes. Eunuch Xian has been with the emperor for decades and is also a popular person around the emperor. When he heard the emperor sigh, he asked, Your Majesty, are you not happy that the third prince is back? Yahouding said, I am happy, of course, but I don't know what he has been through in these years. I see that he has lost a lot of weight. There has been no news for so many years, and he suddenly came back. Eunuch Xian said in a gentle voice, It's so easy to find someone in such a vast sea of people. The third prince must have suffered a lot in these years. Shen Shuwei left the imperial study and thought of the masked man. She didn't know why he entered the palace. He should not know that she was also in the palace, right? Unless he can predict, he must not know. The palace is so big, she and him are not destined to meet, and they will definitely not meet. Before the national teacher comes, it is safest for her to stay away from Wuyu Palace. Shen Shuwei felt relieved thinking about this and walked back to Wuyu Palace with brisk steps. The maid was guarding the door. Seeing Princess Juya coming back, she stepped forward and reported softly, "Princess, the third prince is here to see you." Shen Shuwei's eyes flashed with doubt, "The third prince?" The maid nodded and replied, "Princess, it's the third prince." Shen Shuwei walked in with doubts. She didn't know how many sons Ye Haoding had. Did they have a good relationship with Feng Wuyu? Otherwise, when they learned that Feng Wuyu was back, they all came to see her. Shen Shuwei didn't care about these princes. It didn't matter who came to see her, as long as she didn't see the masked man. Shen Shuwei walked up the arch bridge with brisk steps. Just when she wanted to get off the bridge briskly, she saw a figure standing next to the swing under the peach tree. He was wearing a black brocade robe and a jade belt around his waist, which made him look slender and thin. Her eyes were attracted by the silver mask on her cheek. No, she was scared by the silver mask. Although she could only see the side face, and she couldn't see how the side face looked with the mask on, but her nose was high, her lips were beautiful, and her jawline was also very good. It was obvious that the man under the peach tree was the masked man. Shen Shuwei cursed in her heart. The more she didn't want to meet him, the more she ran into him. If I had known better, I would have spent more time drinking tea with Ye Haoding. Maybe he would have left on his own when he got impatient. Is it still too late to pretend you haven't come back? Shen Shuwei wanted to pretend she didn't see it, and turned around and left. But just as she had this idea, the tigress beside her was already running towards her excitedly. Ouch, the tiger was wagging its tail as it ran, really looking like a giant dog. Shen Shuwei couldn't help but rolled her eyes. "Come on, what's your name? Are you afraid that others won't know I'm back?" Seeing the masked man under the peach tree turning around, Shen Shuwei looked at the huge tiger liger in front of him, and in a hurry, he squatted down. His petite body was easily covered by the huge body of the tiger liger. When the masked man turned around, he only saw Tigress, not Xiaoju. The tigress looked down at Xiaoju, wondering why she suddenly squatted down. It blinked its big eyes twice and stepped back, making me want to squat down. Shen Shuwei noticed its thoughts and patted the tiger on its belly, telling it to stand still. Tiger nuzzled her hand. Shen Shuwei was so nervous that she could only touch its nose perfunctorily, praying in her heart that the masked man would leave soon. Tigress shrugged its nose happily. Just when Shen Shu was secretly praying that she would not be discovered, a male voice that was both familiar and frightening suddenly came from above her head. "What are you doing?" If the masked man wasn't too perverted, the voice would actually be quite nice. No matter how nice it sounds, she never wants to hear it in her life. After being discovered, Shen Shuwei could only bite the bullet and reply, "The tigress is injured, let me show it." At this time, she also guessed that the masked man was the third prince. The third prince's night was cold. While speaking, he lowered his head with his breath so that the masked man could not see his face. Yasuhan looked at her with a half-smile, "Really? Of course, I need to check it carefully," Shen Shu replied without raising his head, his two slender little hands pulling the tigress gracefully. As a doctor, he is very good at pretentiousness and pretense. Tigress was also very cooperative and allowed her to do whatever she wanted without moving. Yasuhan walked around the tiger lion beast and knelt down beside her. Shen Shuwei noticed that the masked man was also squatting down. He was so frightened that he quickly turned his head away and instinctively moved his body to one side. He couldn't help but complain in his heart, "Why is he squatting down?" Yasuhan called out, "Xiaoju." Shen Shuwei instinctively denied, "I'm not Xiaoju, you got the wrong person." Yasuhan chuckled, "You are not Xiaoju, how come you are in Wu Palace? It was only after Shen Shuwei heard this that he realized that he was not asking for it. He really wanted to slap himself unconscious and make him talk nonsense. It's a pity that I'm afraid of pain. If I don't get dizzy after taking the shot, I'll suffer in vain. Shen Chu lowered his head slightly and didn't want to talk to the masked man, but he thought that if he didn't speak, he would admit that he was someone he was not, and that he was pretending. In this way, the masked man would have more reason to say that she was fake, and he might even be more eager to expel her from the palace than Princess Yanyu. She mustered up the courage to raise her head and look at the masked man. The first thing she saw was the eye-catching silver mask. She pretended to widen her eyes in surprise. It turns out it's you. Yasuhan chuckled, it's me. Shen Shuwei asked again, are you the third prince? Yasuhan nodded, well, we grew up together. Shen Shuwei. Feng Wu is unlucky enough to have a perverted childhood sweetheart like you. She grabbed the Tigan's hair, her fear of the masked man still lingering on the day she jumped from the building. I thought I wouldn't be able to see him if I left the Scene Miao people, but I never imagined that I could meet him in Nanzhao Kingdom. She raised her head and wailed silently, could she survive until the day when the Imperial Master came back? Wait, he doesn't know where Xiao Jinyan is. If the masked man wants to kill Xiao Jinyan is no match for him. Shen Shuwei secretly glanced at Yasuhan and found that his red eyes were staring at her unblinkingly, giving her the illusion of being penetrated into her mind. Yasuhan looked at the tiger and lion beast in front of him. He hadn't seen it in so many years. It was more than twice as big as before. Has it been found that tigress has any disease? After Shen Shuwei heard the words, he remembered that he was squatting here because he was treating tigers and lions. She said matter-of-factly, it's just some skin disease, not a big problem. Yasuhan said, that's good, the tigan is not an ordinary beast. If it gets sick, it may not be easy to cure. Shen Shuwei helped the tigress stand up. After squatting for a long time, her legs were a little numb. She glanced at Yasuhan and saw that she had seen him. When did she plan to leave? Yasuhan saw something was wrong with her with sharp eyes, are your legs numb? Shen Shuwei felt that there was nothing he could not say about his numb legs, so he nodded. I'll carry you in. Yasuhan didn't wait for her to speak, then bent down to pick her up and strode towards the side hall. When Shen Shuwei came to his senses, he slapped Yasuhan's chest angrily with both hands, put me down quickly. Don't you know whether men and women can be intimate? Yasuhan lowered his eyes and looked at her, in the past, when you were too lazy to walk, I would carry you on my back, so what if I hug you? You are carrying Feng Wu, not me. Shen Shuwei was furious, I don't remember, why are you telling me this? Yasuhan said, today in the royal study, I heard my father mention your amnesia. You don't remember it, but I remember it. Shen Shuwei. The side hall arrived soon. Yasuhan stepped into the side hall and placed her on the couch. Shen Shuwei sat on the couch, looking up at Yasuhan in front of her. She hated his overbearing behavior. But then again, judging from his actions just now, did he believe that she was Feng Wu? Yasuhan leaned over with his hands on the low table. Shen Shuwei's body instinctively leaned back and kept a distance from him. Yasuhan looked at her actions and did not approach her again. Are you afraid of me? Shen Shuwei's mouth twitched violently. Facing the pervert who forced her to jump off the building, how could she not be afraid? You have seen it, isn't it time to leave? Yasuhan sat down on the couch and said faintly, I plan to have dinner with you. Shen Shuwei immediately replied, I like to eat alone. Yasuhan chuckled, it doesn't matter how many people eat at the table. What's important is that the food on the table is what you like to eat. Shen Shuwei pouted. He must have been secretly spying on her when he was in the Miao tribe. Otherwise, how could he understand her so well? Men and women should not touch each other. It's not appropriate for a man and a woman to stay in a side hall. Yesuhan said, there are not only two of us in the side hall. Shen Shuwei glanced at the side hall and did not see the palace maids. She frowned and looked at Yesuhan, aren't there only two of us? The palace maids are all outside. Yesuhan glanced at Swichuan lying on the ground and Kiu pecking at her feathers on the window. Do Swichuan and Kiu not count? Shen Shuwei, they are all animals. Yesuhan looked at her with a smile, you didn't say that before. Shen Shuwei, she didn't know why Fengwu used to be like this. If it was her, she would treat Swichuan and Kiu as people. It was probably related to food, and the purpose was to eat 2 more servings. In the end, Yesuhan stayed for dinner. Shen Shuwei's nervousness and worry would automatically block when she reached the dinner table, and she would start eating. The table was full of her favorite dishes, so she ate 4 bowls of rice, plus some fruit. After eating and drinking, she lay down on the couch like Geu, looking at Yesuhan who was drinking tea, looking relaxed and contented. He didn't leave even after finishing dinner. Yesuhan looked up, what's wrong? Nothing. There was no way, in front of a powerful pervert, you still have to be cowardly when you need to be cowardly. There was silence for a long time. Yesuhan took 2 sips of tea, raised his head and looked at her, I didn't expect you to enter the palace so soon. Shen Shuwei looked at him in confusion, what do you mean? Yesuhan didn't answer but asked, are you relieved that Xiao Jinyan is alone outside? When Xiao Jinyan was mentioned, Shen Shuwei's heart immediately rose to her throat. Sure enough, he came back to kill Xiao Jinyan. Xiao Jinyan has no grudges against you, why do you always want to kill him? Good night, babies. Ask for monthly tickets and recommendation support. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 565. Shen Shuwei always felt that there was no need to kill a person if there was no conflict of interest, no struggle for power, and no blood feud. Looking at Yesuhan in front of him, he was born with a noble status, and he had no shortage of money or power. Why did he kill Xiao Jinyan? Although she was afraid of Yesuhan, this pervert, as long as she was in the palace for 1 day, she could not avoid contact with him. Why do you want to kill him? Yesuhan filled himself with tea, raised his head and looked at her, his eyes wandering as if he was thinking about something. There was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, but it made Shen Shuwei's back cold. You don't need to know. Yesuhan picked up the teacup and handed it to his lips and took 2 sips. Shen Shuwei stood up suddenly, almost slamming the table, he is my husband, you want to kill him, don't I have the right to know the reason? Yesuhan slowly said, you are Fengwu, and the marriage certificate is Shen Shuwei. Even if Daxia recognizes it, Nanzao will not recognize it. Shen Shuwei snorted in her heart, I am not Fengwu, I came from the modern times, but I can't say this to Yesuhan. Anyway, I won't let you hurt him, rabbits bite when they are anxious. Yesuhan looked at her without blinking, I want to kill him, can you stop me? It was still a light sentence, but it made Shen Shuwei lose all her confidence. When Yesuhan was not a prince, she couldn't beat him. Now he is a prince. Not only can she not beat him, but she is also afraid that he will harm Daxia. Even if I can't stop him, I will try my best to stop him. Yesuhan looked at the fierce Xiaju in front of him, and suddenly thought of the past. She was rarely angry, happy every day, and her mouth never stopped. When she is angry, she looks like this, like a little wild cat, cute and fierce. If you marry me, I will let him go. Shen Shuwei almost didn't think about it, and retorted, want to marry one and get 2 free? You wish. Yesuhan. Shen Shuwei realized what she said, and she coughed twice to ease the embarrassment, I have a lot of bad habits, I am lazy and do nothing. I look cute on the surface, but I am no different from a big man behind the scenes. Not only can I not take care of my husband and children, but I will spend a lot of money to support me. I am such a good-for-nothing person, wouldn't it take up space if you marry me? Yesuhan stared at her with his red eyes without blinking, and Shen Shuwei began to feel guilty. The palace is so big, how much space can your small body take up? No matter how much you eat, I can afford it. Shen Shuwei's face was dark. Sorry, I don't have the idea of divorce. Yesuhan put down the teacup, stood up and came to Shen Shuwei, frightening her to retract her legs and retreat all the way to the fence of the couch, until there was no way to retreat. The beautiful starry eyes looked at him vigilantly like a frightened deer. Seeing her so scared, Yesuhan paused. He didn't seem to do anything to her, why was she so afraid of him? Tomorrow, I will come to see you again. Yesuhan turned and left after saying that. Shen Shuwei was slightly relieved when she saw him walk out of the side hall, and then she collapsed on the couch again. She thought she could eat and drink for free and wait for the national teacher to come back. Now with Yesuhan, she can't eat and drink for free. Shen Shuwei, who was about to take a nap, suddenly opened her eyes. Xiao Jinyan didn't know that the masked man was Yesuhan, the third prince of Nanzhao Kingdom, but the key was that he had returned. It is necessary to inform Xiao Jinyan in advance so that he can be prepared. Shen Shuwei's eyes naturally looked at Sichuan on the ground. Sichuan, who had just finished eating fish, was licking his paws and washing his face leisurely. Feeling the gaze from Shen Shuwei, he raised his head and saw Shen Shuwei smiling at him, which gave him a bad feeling. After a cup of tea, Sichuan let Shen Shuwei hang the small purse around his neck with a confused look on his face. Shen Shuwei rubbed Sichuan's little head. He didn't think his head was small before, but the difference was very obvious after touching the tiger-lion beast. Sichuan, you must hand it over to Xiao Jinyan, understand? I'll give you roast duck when you come back. Sichuan's eyes lit up when he heard about roast duck. When Shen Shuwei patted his butt, he turned around and ran out, using all his strength, and he would have roast duck when he came back. This was not the first time Shen Shuwei asked Sichuan to do this, so he didn't worry too much. It was already time for lighting, but it was not yet completely dark. Sichuan's agile figure shuttled neatly between the red walls and green tiles. After running for a while, Sichuan met an acquaintance. He looked at Yesuhan standing on the wall. Meow. Yesuhan half squatted down and waved to Sichuan, come here. Sichuan took 2 steps forward, and thought of Shen Shuwei's words, so he stopped again, raised his head and looked at Yesuhan in confusion. Yesuhan saw that Sichuan did not come, but he was not angry. Then I can only do it myself. Sichuan turned around and ran, even using all his strength. However, before he ran a few feet away, he was grabbed by the back of his neck and lifted up. Sichuan opened his eyes wide and kicked his limbs desperately, trying to resist. Yesuhan easily lifted Sichuan and looked at the purse on his neck. Sichuan noticed that Yesuhan was looking at the purse, and he stretched out his forelimbs to try to protect the purse, but Yesuhan still easily took the purse off with 2 hands. He held the purse between his fingers, tore it open with his other hand, took out the note inside, and glanced at the words written on it. Urgent. Husband, the masked man has come to Nanzhao Kingdom. He is the third prince Yesuhan. Be careful at all times. He thought I was Feng Wu, so I am safe. Don't worry. Moi. Yesuhan was not surprised after reading the words on the note. Why are you in such a hurry to inform Xiao Jinyan? He chuckled when he read the last sentence. Yesuhan slowly put the note into his purse and glanced at Sichuan. He saw that it stared with 2 blue eyes and looked angry. It looked very much like Shen Shuwei. Yesuhan hung the purse around its neck again and flicked Sichuan's forehead with his slender fingers. Do you dare to run next time? Sichuan cried out in dissatisfaction, meow. Yesuhan loosened his hand, and Sichuan fell on the wall with a snap. Fortunately, It was young and stable, otherwise it would definitely fall off the wall and become a dog chewing mud if it was loosened so suddenly. As soon as it was free, Swichuan ran away without looking back, as if he had been injected with chicken blood, and more like he was afraid of being caught by Yesuhan. Yesuhan slowly stood up, watched Swichuan's snow-white figure disappear on the wall, and then returned to his bedroom. As soon as he stepped into the bedroom, he saw Yayuchin standing there. Maybe he had been waiting for a long time. He walked in. Is there anything? Yayuchin turned around and saw Yesuhan coming in. He said, did you go to see Xiaju? Yesuhan, yeah. Yayuchin smiled and asked, have you noticed that she is not much different from when she was a child after growing up? Yesuhan raised the corner of his lips, she is as greedy as when she was a child. Indeed, Xiaju has been greedy since she was a child. Yayuchin smiled and stared at the mask on his cheek for a while. Why did you wear a mask to see her? Yesuhan did not answer this question. He went straight to the table and sat down. He picked up the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea, and poured one for Yayuchin. Yayuchin also came over and sat down opposite him. Looking at the teacup filled with tea in front of him, he was not in a hurry to drink it. What are you going to do next? Yesuhan said casually, why are you in such a hurry? Yayuchin took a sip of the teacup and said indignantly, I'm just a little impatient. If you hadn't disappeared suddenly, how could the position of the crown prince fall on Yayuxi's head? Yesuhan paused after hearing this and continued to drink tea. Asterisk. Swichuan ran into the inn with all his strength. Seeing Xiao Jinyan, he threw himself into his arms. Finally, he arrived. When Xiao Jinyan saw Swichuan, he knew that Xiaju had delivered the letter. When Swichuan threw himself into his arms, he rubbed its head and took off the pouch on its neck. Like last time, he took out a letter from it, with only a short paragraph written on it. After reading it, Xiao Jinyan frowned. He didn't expect that the person who wanted to kill him would be Yesuhan, the third prince of Nanzhao Kingdom. Did he offend him when he was a hostage in Nanzhao Kingdom? He read the last sentence for a while, because Shen Shuwei and Feng Wuyu looked similar. Yesuhan didn't hurt Shen Shuwei, he probably thought Shen Shuwei was Feng Wuyu. This made him feel a little relieved. Xiao Jinyan read the words on the note again, thought for a while, and patted Swichuan, let's go find Xiaju together. Swichuan shook his body indifferently, anyway, it was going back. Xiao Jinyan followed Swichuan all the way into the palace, and was stopped by someone when he was about to approach Wuyu Palace. Even if the man was wearing a brocade robe, he could see that his figure was thin, and the silver mask was even colder under the moonlight. It was Yesuhan. Swichuan was angry when he saw Yesuhan, blocking him when he left, and blocking him when he came back. Xiao Jinyan looked at Yesuhan on the roof vigilantly. When he was in the Xin Miao tribe, he knew that he was not Yesuhan's opponent. Yesuhan asked knowingly, are you here to find Xiaju? Xiao Jinyan said, I'm here to find her, what does it have to do with you? Yesuhan walked over slowly and said word by word, of course it's related, she is my fiancée. Xiao Jinyan was stunned and wanted to refute, but he couldn't expose Xiaju's identity. It was Feng Wuyu who had the engagement. Yesuhan sneered, I didn't go to find you, you came to me by yourself, don't blame me. As soon as the voice fell, Xiao Jinyan felt a strong murderous aura, and he instinctively drew the soft sword at his waist to fight. Swichuan took advantage of the fight between the two and ran into Wuyu Palace again with all his strength. Shen Shuwei had just finished bathing and was sitting at the head of the bed reading a storybook waiting for Swichuan. When she heard the movement, she looked up and saw Swichuan running in quickly. When Swichuan climbed onto the bed, she found that the purse on Swichuan's neck was empty. Jinyan didn't reply. Miao Swichuan called, ran down from the bed again, and looked back at her when he ran to the door. Shen Shuwei knew something was wrong when she saw this. She quickly picked up her coat and put it on, then ran out with the snowball. Xiao Jinyan soon fell behind and was forced to fall off the roof by Yesuhan. For a moment, a picture appeared in his mind, that is, the picture of falling off the cliff. He barely managed to stabilize his body, covered his chest with his hands, and looked up at Yesuhan jumping off the roof. When he walked towards him, he brought invisible pressure. Xiao Jinyan clenched the soft sword in his hand. You hurt me, and then knocked me off the cliff. Yesuhan's eyes flashed a cold light. So what? You deserve to die. Xiao Jinyan said, because Xiaju likes me. You are jealous, right? Do you think that if you kill me, Xiaju will like you? Yesuhan took out the silver flowing fire from his sleeve and sneered, I grew up with her, and my feelings are deeper than yours. Really? Xiao Jinyan also sneered, you are so cruel, she will only hate you. Yesuhan paused when he heard this. His eyebrows were furrowed under the mask, and his body was stiff. He clenched the liuhuo in his hand, but he didn't make a move. When Shen Chuwei came, she saw Xiao Jinyan being forced into a corner with his hands covering his chest. She knew he was injured. Looking at Yesuhan again, he stood there straight, holding something like a hidden weapon in his hand. She knew without asking that he was going to deal with Xiao Jinyan. She rushed over without thinking, stretched out her hands and pushed Yesuhan away. Shen Chuwei was stronger than ordinary people, and Yesuhan was unprepared, so he was pushed directly to the wall. When Yesuhan reacted, it was too late. His body hit the wall, and a fishy sweetness surged in his throat, but he was forced to swallow it. After pushing Yesuhan, Shen Chuwei ignored him and ran straight to Xiao Jinyan, looking him up and down worriedly. This was not enough, so he used both hands. Husband, where are you injured? Xiao Jinyan saw her push Yesuhan down regardless of everything, and secretly worried about her. I'm fine. You scared me to death. Shen Chuwei still took his hand and started to feel his pulse. Xiao Jinyan didn't stop him when she saw it, because she might not feel at ease if she didn't feel his pulse. Yesuhan stood up straight, pursed his lips and looked at the two people opposite without saying a word, and the liuhuo in his hand was ready to move. I don't know how long he endured it. He put away the liuhuo, turned around and left quietly. Xiao Jinyan looked at Yesuhan's sudden departure, a little surprised and confused, and when he looked down at Xiaju, he suddenly seemed to understand. After taking the pulse, Shen Chuwei looked up at Xiao Jinyan, her eyes full of worry. You have internal injuries, although not serious, you still need to take good care of yourself. Xiao Jinyan said gently, it's okay. Shen Chuwei turned her head to look at Yesuhan, originally wanting to ask a few questions, but there was no one behind her. Hey, where is he? Xiao Jinyan said, he's gone. She secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he left, otherwise she didn't know how to persuade Yesuhan to let Xiao Jinyan go. Shen Chuwei took Xiao Jinyan back to Wu Palace. Fortunately, she didn't have the habit of having someone serve her personally. It was so late, and the palace maids and eunuchs had gone to rest. In the bedroom, Xiao Jinyan sat on the couch. He had just been treated with acupuncture, and his complexion was much better, and his chest didn't hurt so much. He looked at Shen Chuwei busy preparing medicine at the table, and couldn't help but think of what Yesuhan said. Xiaoju and he had an engagement. After Shen Chuwei prepared the medicine, she wrapped it one by one with oil paper so that Xiao Jinyan could take it back to the inn. After preparing all this, she stood up and walked in front of Xiao Jinyan, looking at his complexion, which was much better than before. Xiao Jinyan looked up at her. Did Yesuhan say anything to you? Good night, babies. Babies, when will the update be released? Vote for the monthly ticket. If you get a lot of monthly votes, there will be a new update. By the way, please vote for the monthly ticket and recommendation ticket. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 566. Shen Shuwei blinked her beautiful eyes twice. She must not tell Xiao Jinyan about Yesuhan's words of marrying him, otherwise he would definitely worry. I was very surprised to see him today. I was almost scared to death. Fortunately, he thought I was Feng Wu, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. Xiao Jinyan naturally knew her situation at the time, and even he was surprised. Didn't he say anything? I said he did, but I ignored him anyway. But don't worry, my husband, I'm still very safe now. Shen Shuwei leaned close to his ear and whispered, I will try my best to wrap my vest well and won't let others find out that I'm a fake. Seeing that she always didn't answer the question, Xiao Jinyan patiently asked again, what did he say to you? Shen Shuwei knew that she couldn't fool anyone in front of a smart person. He said Feng Wu grew up with him, and he had been carrying Feng Wu on his back since childhood. In fact, he didn't say anything. Anyway, we will run away after the national teacher comes back and the matter is resolved. Xiao Jinyan also felt that it would be wisest to leave Nanzhao Kingdom after the matter was resolved. It would be unwise to confront Yesuhan head-on. Although Yesuhan would take Xiaju into consideration, he couldn't always rely on Xiaju to save himself. Shen Shuwei said, Jinyan, you can rest here tonight, and go back after you have rested enough. Xiao Jinyan said, I think so too. Shen Shuwei took the initiative to undress him, and she took off his clothes easily. When lying on the bed, Shen Shuwei thought to herself that they were really brave, and Xiao Jinyan stayed overnight again. She found that when she was used to sleeping alone, she was always uncomfortable with someone lying next to her. When she was used to sleeping with two people, it would be very uncomfortable to sleep alone suddenly. She had long been used to sleeping in the same bed with Xiao Jinyan, so she soon felt sleepy when sleeping together. Xiao Jinyan was not sleepy at all, and there was always some hidden worry in his heart. He looked down at the person in his arms, and heard the even breathing sound and knew that she had fallen asleep. He couldn't help but sigh, her sleep quality was really good. Xiao Jinyan retracted his gaze, closed his eyes and began to sleep. He had a dream, dreaming of Xiaju when she was a child. Because the girl in front of him looked very similar to Xiaju, her eyebrows and eyes were curved when she smiled at him, just like Xiaju's smile. Two small canine teeth were exposed from time to time, with a bit of mischief. At the end of the dream, Xiao Jinyan was awakened by shock. He opened his eyes suddenly, subconsciously looked down at the person in his arms, and saw that she was sleeping soundly, and then he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He supported the bed with both hands and slowly sat up, raised his hand to wipe his forehead, and found that it was all cold sweat. The dream just now was too real, so real that it made him palpitate and terrified. Xiao Jinyan sat for a while before getting up to change clothes. After getting dressed, he stood by the bed and looked at the person who was still sleeping. He leaned over and kissed her on the forehead before turning around and leaving. Before leaving, he took away the medicine she had carefully prepared. Asterisk. Xiaju, get up. When Shen Shuwei was sleeping soundly, there was always a fly buzzing in her ear, which annoyed her to death. She frowned and pulled up the quilt to cover her head. Go away. Seeing this, Yesuhan reached out to pull her quilt. If you don't get up, there will be no tofu pudding. Tofu pudding? Shen Shuwei hadn't eaten tofu pudding for a long time. The best way to drive away the sleepiness bug was to let the greed bug seduce her. She opened her eyes and thought she saw a little palace maid, but she saw a silver mask, which scared her so much that she almost screamed. She asked angrily, "Who told you to enter my bedroom?" Yesuhan said, "I came here by myself." Don't you know that men and women should not touch each other? How can you break into a girl's bedroom casually? Shen Shuwei remembered that she was a young woman, and said, "You can't break into a young woman's bedroom casually. You don't care about your reputation, but I do." Yasuhan didn't care. "You used to run into my room often, and I didn't say anything." Shen Shuwei ignored his words because he was not talking about her. She urged, "You go out first. I have to get up, change clothes and wash up." Okay. Yasuhan stood up and walked out, closing the door before leaving. When Shen Shuwei saw him go out, she immediately got up and ran over to lock the door. Who knows if this pervert will peek? When Yasuhan came out, he saw the tiger-lion beast lying on the corridor, and he walked over. The tiger-lion beast heard the footsteps and raised his head. When he found that it was not Xiaju, he lowered his head with some disappointment and continued to wait. Yasuhan sat down in the corridor, turned his head to look at the tiger-lion beast, reached out and rubbed its head, but it caused the tiger-lion beast to snort. Yasuhan laughed softly, "Are you still unhappy?" The tiger-lion beast looked at Yasuhan lazily with its big eyes like copper bells, and its eyes seemed to say, "I have to be happy if you touch me. Do you think you are Xiaju?" Yasuhan had been with the tiger-lion beast for a long time before, and he still had some understanding of its temper. "So many years have passed, and your temper has not changed." The tiger-lion beast snorted. Shen Shuwei put on her clothes and walked out. The tiger-lion beast saw it, stood up and ran over with its tail shaking. Yasuhan laughed out loud, "It really hasn't changed at all." Shen Shuwei looked at the tiger-lion beast running towards her, and wanted to dodge, but when she thought of the consequences of dodging, the tiger-lion beast would be wronged for a long time, so she had to welcome its warm hug. The tiger-lion beast can stand, but being held by its huge body, she always has the risk of being crushed into a meat pie at any time. Feng Wu must have taught it to stand before, otherwise how could it be able to do this? In fact, the tiger-lion beast learned to stand by itself when it was young, because it felt that standing could bring many benefits, such as Xiaju would laugh and feed it. And it can also help Xiaju, such as climbing the wall. Shen Shuwei rubbed the tiger-lion beast's neck, and saw Yasuhan not far away, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Is he planning to have breakfast with her? The fact is that they have breakfast together. Shen Shuwei looked at the meal in front of her, and her eyes fell on the tofu pudding, which was her favorite salty tofu pudding. She picked up a spoon and scooped up a spoonful to her mouth. The temperature was slightly hot, which was a tolerable temperature. The saltiness was just right, a little spicy, and the taste was better than expected. Yasuhan looked up at Xiaju, who was eating tofu pudding opposite. When eating, she rarely spoke because it affected her speed of eating. After breakfast, Shen Shuwei wiped the corner of her mouth with the handkerchief handed over by the palace maid, glanced at Yasuhan opposite, and thought of what happened last night. In order to avoid such a thing from happening again, she felt it necessary to have a good talk with Yasuhan. "Let's talk." Yasuhan looked up. "What to talk about?" Shen Shuwei clenched the teacup in her hand, looked at the gloomy Yasuhan in front of her and said, "Don't hurt Xiao Jinyan." Yasuhan paused while drinking tea, and said coldly, "Don't mention him in front of me." Shen Shuwei felt a chill on her back, raised the teacup and took 2 sips of hot tea. The warm tea seemed to be able to drive away the coldness emanating from the opposite side. "If you promise not to hurt him, I won't mention it." Yasuhan put down the teacup. "Want to go out for a walk?" Shen Shuwei originally wanted to refuse, but he hadn't promised not to hurt Xiao Jinyan yet, so she had to compromise and agree. The morning sun was bright but not dazzling, and Shen Shuwei was surprised to find that it was already autumn. Just after getting off the arch bridge, the eunuch came in to report. "Princess, the prince is here." Shen Shuwei raised her head and saw Ye Yuxi coming over in a blue brocade robe, holding a food box in his hand. There was no need to guess that Ye knew there was food inside. Ye Yuxi strode in and saw Yesuhan next to Xiaju. He frowned slightly but walked over. Yesuhan chuckled, "The prince is here." Ye Yuxi smiled and greeted, "Third brother is here too." When Yesuhan came back yesterday, the brothers had already met. Yesuhan, who had disappeared for almost 10 years, suddenly came back. Some were happy and some were worried. On the eve of the establishment of the crown prince, Yesuhan suddenly disappeared. The position of the crown prince had been vacant for many years before it fell on Ye Yuxi. Now that Yesuhan is back, Ye Yuxi is naturally worried about his position as the crown prince. Shen Shuwei raised her head and glanced at the two brothers in front of her, thinking that if the two brothers were reminiscing about the past, would she not need to accompany them for a walk? It sounds nice to say that he was accompanying her to familiarize herself with the environment, but in fact, she was accompanying them. When Ye Yuxi looked at Xiaju, he smiled, "Xiaju, this is a snack from Yazhizai, try it." Shen Shuwei happily took it and thanked him, "Thank you, Prince." Then he handed it to the little maid next to him and asked her to take it in. Ye Yuxi glanced at Yesuhan and guessed that he had breakfast with Xiaju without asking. "Xiaju, there is a stage in the bamboo garden tonight. How about going to watch a play together tonight?" Shen Shuwei was not very interested in the play, but still asked curiously, "What play?" Ye Yuxi said, "Liangzhu." Shen Shuwei was familiar with Liangzhu, so she nodded, "Then listen to it then." "I'll pick you up then." Ye Yuxi smiled and looked at Yesuhan, "Where are you going, third brother?" Yesuhan replied indifferently, "Take a walk." After that, he took Xiaju and continued to walk forward, ignoring Ye Yuxi directly. Shen Shuwei's face was full of black lines. Ye Yuxi looked at Yesuhan's actions and his face was also black. He was the prince after all. Yesuhan not only did not respect him as His Royal Highness the Prince, but also ignored him to find Xiaju. At night, Ye Yuxi came to pick up Xiaju to watch the play on time, but he saw Yesuhan taking Xiaju out of Wuya Palace. Shen Shuwei was embarrassed to see Ye Yuxi coming. Ye Yuxi suppressed his unhappiness, took a few steps forward, and said with a smile, "Xiaju, let's go, the play is about to start." After speaking, he looked at Yesuhan again and asked with a smile, "Third brother, do you want to watch it together?" Yesuhan lowered his eyes and glanced at Shen Shuwei, "I'll take Xiaju out of the palace to play for a while, and I don't have time to watch the play." Ye Yuxi's face looked a little ugly when he heard this, and he tried not to get angry in front of him. Didn't Xiaju say he wanted to watch the play? Why is he leaving the palace again? He smiled and looked at Xiaju, with a puzzled look in his eyes. Shen Shuwei shrugged helplessly. It was not her fault. She was also forced to do so. "Let's go. Go early and come back early." Yesuhan took Shen Shuwei out of Wuya Palace. Ye Yuxi's smile could no longer be suppressed. Looking at the two people leaving side by side, his face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. Yesuhan was clearly deliberately not giving him and Xiaju a chance to get along. But no matter how angry he was, he couldn't just take action to snatch someone. Inside the carriage, the space was very spacious, with a low table in the middle and 4 lights on the top of the carriage, which illuminated the dark carriage very brightly. Shen Shuwei and Yesuhan kept a very safe distance, but there were only 2 of them in the carriage, and they always felt oppressed by a certain atmosphere and couldn't breathe. She lifted the curtain and took a breath. Yesuhan looked at her actions and glanced at the empty space between the 2 of them. "I won't eat you, you don't have to be so afraid of me." Shen Shuwei tightly grasped the curtain, looked back at Yesuhan, and said, "You forced me to jump off the building." Yesuhan paused when he heard this. It turned out that he was so afraid of me because of the time he jumped off the building. If it wasn't for him, would you jump off the building? For a man, you don't even want your own life, and you still have the nerve to say it? Shen Shuwei felt that he was the first to complain, and she retorted angrily, "You forced me to jump off the building? If you didn't force me, I'm not a fool to jump off the building? And oh, he is my husband and wife are one body, and they won't run away when disaster strikes." "Yesuhan, shut up." Shen Shuwei immediately shut her mouth, fearing that he would get angry and kick her out of the carriage directly, and it would be too unprofitable. In the carriage, the atmosphere was even more tense than before. Shen Shuwei once again leaned out of the carriage to breathe fresh air. When the carriage stopped, Shen Shuwei secretly glanced at Yesuhan, only to see him looking at her. She immediately retracted her gaze and got off the carriage. After getting off, she saw Yesuhan walking out of the carriage calmly and then getting off. Yesuhan looked down at her. "Let's go." Shen Shuwei asked doubtfully, "Where to?" Yesuhan glanced at the busy streets and said, "Go wherever you want to go. I'm going to find Xiao Jinyan." Before Shen Shuwei finished speaking, Yesuhan interrupted coldly, "No." Shen Shuwei pouted, "Didn't you say I can go wherever I want? It's rare to come out, so naturally she wants to see Xiao Jinyan." Yesuhan explained, "I'm talking about food." Shen Shuwei. Looking at the busy streets, there are many vendors selling food. Shen Shuwei bought delicious food when she saw it, trying to turn her anger into appetite, so that she could ignore the moody Yesuhan around her when eating delicious food. Along the way, Yesuhan's hands were full of food bought by Shen Shuwei. She was responsible for eating and he was responsible for paying the bill. Seeing that Shen Shuwei's mouth never stopped, he finally couldn't help but remind her, "Eat less, it's easy to get food accumulation." Shen Shuwei had eaten dinner and came out. She was already full. She held her bulging stomach and looked up at Yesuhan. She felt aggrieved but couldn't say it. "Why didn't you remind me earlier? I thought you were going to eat me to death." "Going back?" Yesuhan asked with an inquiring tone. In Shen Shuwei's ears, it sounded no different from going back. Shen Shuwei nodded and got on the carriage with Yesuhan. As when they came, Shen Shuwei kept a very safe distance from Yesuhan. No one talked all the way until they entered the palace. Shen Shuwei noticed from the corner of her eye that something was wrong with Yesuhan. He leaned on the armrest with his hand and his head tilted slightly, and he looked like he was asleep. She called out tentatively, "Third prince." Shen Shuwei saw that Yesuhan didn't respond, so she stretched out her finger and poked his mask, but Yesuhan still didn't react. "Sleeping so soundly?" Shen Shuwei stared at the mask for a while, a little curious about what he looked like. Now that the mask is off, he shouldn't be able to find it, right? Good night, babies. Please support with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 567. Shen Shuwei stretched out her hand, but shrank back because she was timid. She stared at the eyes under the mask for a long time, and stretched out her finger to poke again. After waiting for a while and seeing that he didn't respond, she boldly stretched out her hand to untie his mask. At first glance, she couldn't see the rope on the mask. She pulled it twice before she saw an ordinary silk rope, which didn't feel like silk. She pulled it and found that it didn't come off. How did he tie it? Shen Shuwei originally just wanted to take a peek, but she was stumped by a rope. She frowned and took out the broken moon from the space. It was a sharp weapon that could cut iron like mud. Was she afraid that she couldn't cut the rope? Shen Shuwei held the broken moon tightly, and hesitated when she was about to cut it. What if he woke up and found that the rope of the mask was broken? Would he be very angry? At the moment when Shen Shuwei hesitated, her wrist was tightly grasped by a hand, and she was so scared that she almost threw the broken moon away. Yesuhan looked up at Shen Shuwei. "What are you doing? It's rare to be caught peeping at someone." Shen Shuwei smiled awkwardly. I just wanted to see what material your mask is made of, that's all. Even she didn't believe this reason, so Yesuhan certainly wouldn't believe it. Yesuhan glanced at the broken moon in her hand. Shen Shuwei also subconsciously glanced at the broken moon, which made it even harder to explain. Just then, the carriage suddenly stopped. Shen Shuwei sighed in her heart that it stopped too timely. Let's get off when we get there. After saying that, she stretched out her hand to pry Yesuhan's hand apart, and got off the carriage without looking back, as if she would be silenced if she stayed in the carriage for a while longer. After Shen Shuwei got off, she stood outside the carriage and waited for a long time, but Yesuhan didn't come down, and it was hard to urge him. Is he angry? After a long time, she saw Yesuhan slowly coming out of the carriage. After Yesuhan came down, he told the guard beside him, "You send Princess Juya back." The guard lowered his eyebrows and nodded, "I obey your order." Shen Shuwei looked at Yesuhan in doubt, and saw him say, "I will go back first." After saying this, he left without looking back. Shen Shuwei had a question mark on his forehead. What did Yesuhan's eyes mean? It seemed like a different person. The guard took out the things in the carriage one by one and stood in front of Princess Juya. Although Shen Shuwei was puzzled by Yesuhan's reaction, he did not go into it and turned back to Wu Palace. The palace was full of red palace lanterns. Yesuhan walked for a long time holding the wall, and finally couldn't help spitting out blood. The bright red blood sprayed on the wall. Even in the dark night, people could clearly see that it was blood. Yesuhan stared at the blood stain for a while, took out a square handkerchief from his sleeve pocket and wiped the blood stain on the wall. The blood on the wall was not so easy to clean, so he went to the lake to get some water and wiped the blood off. After doing all this, Yesuhan stood up and left. In the dark night, the thin figure stood straight. Asterisk. Su Qingqing went out for the first time, and she had been excited for the past few days. She retracted her eyes from the carriage and looked at Jun Wuxian. "Axian, where are we going to find Shen Shuwei?" Jun Wuxian paused while drinking tea, raised his eyes to look at Su Qingqing, and saw her smiling face. He smiled and said, "Let's go to Mobei first." Su Qingqing loosened the curtain, moved to Jun Wuxian's side, picked up the teacup and handed it to his lips and drank 2 sips. "Although I haven't been there, I've heard my father and my eldest brother mention it." Jun Wuxian said, "It's very close to the desert, and there will be sandstorms when the wind blows. The living environment is not as good as in the capital." "My father said the same thing, but he told my little brother not to be ungrateful." Su Qingqing smiled after she finished speaking. Jun Wuxian smiled when he heard this. General Su has always been strict with his son, but he dotes on Su Qingqing. "Are you tired after traveling for a few days?" Su Qingqing smiled and shook her head, "No." Jun Wuxian looked at the delicate Su Qingqing. How could she not be tired when she had never been out? "There is no inn to stay in today's journey. We have to stay outside tonight." If it were the Su Qingqing of the past, she would naturally not be able to bear the hardship of the bumpy road. Not only could she not bear the hardship, but she would also complain all the way, not to mention staying overnight in the wild. But now is different from the past. As long as I am with Jun Wuxian, what does it matter if I suffer a little? Su Qingqing's eyes curved, "I'm fine, it's the same sleeping in the carriage." Jun Wuxian smiled and hugged her into his arms. In the past, Chu Zhao was with him when he went on a long journey. This was the first time that he had a delicate woman by his side. There were some new fun on the road. Night fell. Chu Zhao parked the carriage next to the tree, tied the rope, and began to pick up branches to build a fire. Jun Wuxian took Su Qingqing out of the carriage. When getting off the carriage, it was Jun Wuxian who carried her down. Su Qingqing blushed slightly with shame. Jun Wuxian said, "It's a bit cold at night, go sit in front of the fire for a while." "Yeah, Su Qingqing followed Jun Wuxian to the fire and sat down. In the dark night, it was quiet all around. Su Qingqing suddenly thought of the autumn hunting, which was the feeling. The food was prepared by Chu Zhao, so they didn't have to worry about it. They ate some cakes and the water was just boiled. Eating only cakes would make one thirsty, so Jun Wuxian took out a teacup, poured a cup of tea and handed it to Su Qingqing. The water is very hot, be careful. Yes, Su Qingqing took the teacup from him, blew on it to her lips for a long time, and then took a sip, repeating this several times. Chu Zhao looked up at his master and mistress-to-be. He had followed his master for so many years, and at the age of 30, he thought his master would stay single forever. Who would have thought that his master would solve his personal problems in a flash? If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have thought that his master would only be so attentive and considerate to Xiaoju. Because they had to travel tomorrow, they went to rest after eating the cakes. Su Qingqing stood on the carriage and hesitated to go in. Jun Wuxian asked, "What's wrong?" Su Qingqing couldn't help asking, "Don't you sleep in the carriage?" Jun Wuxian glanced at the cushions outside the carriage. He was used to traveling far away over the years, so he could sleep anywhere. "I'm outside." Su Qingqing knew that the outside that Jun Wuxian pointed to was where Chu Zhao sat when driving the carriage, and it would definitely be uncomfortable to sleep there for a night. But it's not as comfortable as sleeping inside. Jun Wuxian immediately understood what she meant. He smiled and asked, "Do you want me to go in and sleep with you?" Su Qingqing nodded shyly, "Yes." Jun Wuxian asked again, "Aren't you afraid?" Su Qingqing said, "We are engaged, why should I be afraid?" Jun Wuxian said, "Go in." Su Qingqing didn't know what he meant, but she still lowered her head and entered the carriage obediently. After entering, she saw Jun Wuxian followed in. It was obviously she who asked him to come in, but she was embarrassed. After Jun Wuxian lit the lights in the carriage, the dark carriage lit up instantly. He opened the dark box under the carriage and took out the bedding and spread it in the carriage. "Go to sleep." Yes, Su Qingqing sat down on the bedding, took off her shoes, and lay down. She looked at Jun Wuxian and saw him sitting there with his back against the carriage. "Are you going to sit all night?" Jun Wuxian chuckled, "What else?" "Lie with you." Su Qingqing whispered, "Is it not possible?" Jun Wuxian supported his hands on her side, lowered his eyes and looked at Su Qingqing. "It's not that I can't, but my self-control is not as good as you think." Yes, Su Qingqing didn't react to the meaning of his words. Jun Wuxian didn't lie, he was a man, not Lu Ziyi who could remain calm even if he sat on her lap. It was hard for him to think about it or not with a woman sleeping beside him. "Go to sleep." Su Qingqing realized the meaning of Jun Wuxian's words later, her face flushed and she was embarrassed to speak again. Jun Wuxian sat up straight, picked up the soft pillow beside him and put it behind his back, then leaned against the wall of the carriage to rest. Su Qingqing fell asleep not long after closing her eyes. How could she not be tired after traveling for several days? In the quiet carriage, Jun Wuxian heard the even breathing sound and knew that Su Qingqing was asleep. He closed his eyes and went to sleep. It was 10 days later when he arrived in Mobei. Jun Wuxian couldn't get close to the military camp, so he could only stay in the inn in the town temporarily. After settling down, he went to have lunch. Halfway through the meal, Su Qingqing suggested, "Xian, why don't I go to the military camp? My father is a general, and many people know him, including Prince Yu. They should let me in." Jun Wuxian thought about it. They came here and didn't know how Shen Shuwei and Xiao Jinyan were doing now. If they didn't ask clearly, it would be difficult to find them. "You can try." Su Qingqing was most happy to be able to help Jun Wuxian instead of dragging him down all the time. She was very excited. "Okay, when will we try?" Jun Wuxian said, "Tomorrow, Take a good rest today. Su Qingqing nodded vigorously, and then said hopefully, okay, I hope Shen Shuwei has found His Highness and is in the military camp, so we don't have to keep looking. Jun Wuxian said, I hope so. I also want to see Shen Shuwei as soon as possible, and confirm whether she is Xiaju as soon as possible. Su Qingqing said, I hope she is, so you don't have to look for your sister everywhere. Jun Wuxian smiled, picked up a piece of dessert and put it in the bowl in front of her. Su Qingqing looked at the dessert in the bowl, happily picked it up and put it in her mouth to take a bite, soft and delicious, with bean paste inside, very sweet. At night. Although Su Qingqing and Jun Wuxian were engaged, they still slept in separate beds, and the two slept next to each other. Su Qingqing lay on the bed, looking at the wall in front of her. She knew that Jun Wuxian was on the other side of the wall. I don't know if it's because I read too many storybooks, but there is always a sense of weirdness between her and Jun Wuxian. I don't know if it's because Jun Wuxian is too gentlemanly or because she's not charming enough. The most intimate thing between them is hugging, and the number of kisses can be counted on one hand. Su Qingqing patted her head irritably. She couldn't think about it anymore, otherwise she would be depressed. The next day, after breakfast, Jun Wuxian rode a horse with Su Qingqing to the military camp. Su Qingqing sat in Jun Wuxian's arms, thinking about the first time she rode a horse with Jun Wuxian. She was excited all the way, and when she got off the horse, she felt that the bright thigh was not hers. Jun Wuxian took out a face towel and put it on her, saying softly, there is sand on the road, and the sun is scorching. If you don't cover it, your delicate skin may not be able to bear it. Su Qingqing thought Jun Wuxian was too careful, and she was only happy. After tying the face towel, Jun Wuxian held the reins tightly with one hand, clamped the horse's belly, and the horse ran out quickly. It takes 2 hours to get from the town to the military camp. After running for 2 hours, Su Qingqing's butt couldn't bear it anymore. It rubbed against the saddle, which was a bit painful, but she gritted her teeth and endured it. Jun Wuxian seemed to guess that her butt was hurting, and whispered in her ear, hold it a little longer, we're almost there. I know Su Qingqing felt a little embarrassed, and at the same time, she felt that she was a burden to Jun Wuxian. If she had known that this day would come, she would have learned riding skills no matter how hard or tired she was. My elder brother said that it would not hurt so much if you got used to riding a horse. Unless it took too long, men would not be able to bear it. Suddenly, 2 soldiers in black armor appeared in front of them and blocked their way. The soldiers who had been exposed to the wind and sun every day had a face as black as charcoal and their lips were cracked. Su Qingqing saw it. No wonder Jun Wuxian put such a thick face towel on her. With her skin, it would be sunburned and peeled in less than half a day. The soldier said coldly, the front is a strategic area of the military camp. No outsiders are allowed to take even a step forward, otherwise they will be killed without mercy. Su Qingqing replied, I am Su Qingqing, the daughter of General Su. I am here to see Prince Yu. My eldest brother is a general and is also in the military camp. The soldiers looked at each other and asked loudly, do you have a certificate? Su Qingqing thought of the token her father gave her, and hurriedly took it out from her arms. Can the token my father gave me be used as a certificate? The general said, let me see. Su Qingqing handed the token to the soldier. The soldier took the token and looked up and down for several times, and then looked at Su Qingqing twice, his eyes looking at the scarf on her cheek. Take off the scarf and let's see. Su Qingqing instinctively resisted, do you still need to see the face? The soldier said coldly, although this token is engraved with General Su, it does not mean that you are General Su's daughter. Even if you are General Su's daughter, you cannot enter the strategic area of the military camp casually. Su Qingqing frowned. Is even the token given by her father useless? She looked up at the soldier, then can you tell Prince Yu that I'm here to see him? The Crown Princess and I are good friends, and Prince Yu knows me, too. Prince Yu is busy fighting on the battlefield, how can he care about these things? If this token is General Su's military token, it would be useful, but this token is not very useful. The soldier returned the token to Su Qingqing. Su Qingqing took the token and said with some dissatisfaction, how could my father's personal token be given to me? Jun Wuxian hugged Su Qingqing into his arms. Seeing that the two soldiers in front of him were unmoved, he had no choice but to reach into his arms and take out a token and hold it up for the soldiers to see. He would not take out this token unless it was absolutely necessary. Do you recognize this token? The soldier looked at the token in Jun Wuxian's hand. It was completely different from the previous token. The color was darker, and the complicated pattern on the token was also something they had never seen before. When he saw the word Xian written on the token, he couldn't help but open his eyes wide and was stunned for a long time. Su Qingqing looked at the shocked expressions of the two people in front of her, raised her head and looked at Jun Wuxian with some doubts, and glanced at the token. What token did he show to the soldiers that shocked them so much? Good night, babies. Please support with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 568. Jun Wuxian lowered his eyes and saw Su Qingqing's puzzled face. He just smiled and didn't say anything. He raised his head and looked at the soldiers in front of him. Did you recognize it? Jun Wuxian glanced at the token in his hand and said, there are 3 of these tokens, made of 1,000-year-old cold iron, and the pattern on them cannot be imitated by others. The soldiers looked at Jun Wuxian in front of them after being shocked. Anyone with eyes could see that he was full of nobility and handsome face. It was difficult for ordinary people to raise him. He must have been born into a noble family. Although they had never seen this token, they had definitely heard of it. This token is the token of Suanmen. Countless people have heard of it, but few have seen it. As the most mysterious sect of metaphysics, Suanmen is known to everyone. I don't know how many people want to join Suanmen, but they can't get in. This is the shocked expression they showed when they saw the word Xian. Are you from Suanmen? The soldier even changed his tone of voice. Jun Wuxian said, that's right. I want to see Prince Yu. I have something important to discuss. The soldier stopped stopping him after hearing this. Please follow me. Jun Wuxian nodded. Su Qingqing stared at Jun Wuxian in surprise. She had never asked Jun Wuxian about his identity and family background. In her opinion, these were not important because her family was not short of money. As long as the two of them liked each other, it was fine. Judging from Jun Wuxian's clothes, he didn't look like he was short of money. He was generous and didn't agree to marry her for money and future. Although he was a little in love, there was nothing she could do. Who made her like him? Now, she felt that she had to look at Jun Wuxian in a new light. He was amazing. Jun Wuxian saw Su Qingqing's doubts, and he whispered while riding his horse, I didn't want to take out the token at first, but I had no choice but to use it. Su Qingqing raised her head and couldn't help asking, why is it not your identity? Jun Wuxian smiled, do you care? Su Qingqing shook her head, I don't care, I'm just a little curious. Then she whispered, I feel so powerful. Jun Wuxian couldn't help laughing, I'm just a bystander. Su Qingqing's eyes were full of admiration, that's also powerful. Jun Wuxian smiled and hugged her waist tightly, flicked the whip and followed the soldiers' horses. From a distance, I saw countless white hills, and I knew that the military camp had arrived. It was also smooth when I entered. Although Su Qingqing had been to the military camp many times, it was her first time to come to the military camp, and she was also shocked. All the way, the soldiers were tanned like charcoal, their clothes were torn, and when they passed the tents, they smelled the smell of stinky socks. No wonder, Dad said, aren't your food and supplies good enough? You still complain about this and that. Wait until you go to the battlefield for 2 days, and you will know how good your life is. The soldier took them to a tent, which was simply furnished with a table and 4 benches. The soldier said while making tea, "You two wait here first. I will report to King Yu when he comes back." "Thank you." Jun Wuxian took Su Qingqing to sit down at the table. The soldier put the tea in front of the two and left. The two were a little thirsty after riding for so long. Su Qingqing picked up the teacup and put it to her lips to drink, looking around with a pair of almond eyes. "Axian, do you think Shen Shuwei has found the prince? It's been so long." Jun Wuxian said, "It's hard to say, we will know when King Yu comes." "That's right." Su Qingqing lowered her head and continued to drink tea. "In fact, Daxia has already won. Xiao Jinyu has been talking to General Su during this period of time, because Suiyu country and Fenki country are not sincere enough and lack attitude. If they have a good attitude and sincerity, Xiao Jinyu would have returned to the court by now. He had been missing his wife for a long time. As soon as he came back, a soldier came to report. "Prince Yu, someone is looking for you." Xiao Jinyu got off the horse neatly, patted the horse's head, and asked casually, "Who is it?" "The people of Suanmen, and another one who claims to be General Su's daughter," the soldier said. General Su heard that his sister was coming, and he showed an unbelievable look. His sister was delicate and the journey was long. How could she come to the military camp? "My sister is here? Are you sure it's my sister?" The soldier said, "I don't know." Xiao Jinyu was stunned for a long time before he reacted after hearing Suanmen. He was excited. "The people of Suanmen came to see me? Is it true?" The soldier said, "The man has the Suanmen token in his hand, it should be correct." General Su was also puzzled. "My sister is with the people of Suanmen. I will go and see." Xiao Jinyu threw the reins to the soldier, and strode towards the reception camp with excitement. "I will go and see too." General Su threw the rope in his hand to the soldier and strode after him. Xiao Jinyu strode into the reception camp and saw 2 people sitting at the table, a man and a woman. He recognized the woman, Su Qingqing. As for the man, he looked him up and down. He was about the same height as him, good-looking, and had a noble temperament with a bit of laziness. "Is this someone from Suanmen?" Su Qingqing saw Xiao Jinyu stand up and bowed. "King Yu." Jun Wuxian looked up and saw Xiao Jinyu. His face was 6 points similar to Xiao Jinyan, and his skin was wheat-colored, probably because he was tanned after fighting in the battlefield. He put down the teacup in his hand, stood up, and came to stand beside Su Qingqing, performing the greetings of the martial arts world. "King Yu." When Jun Wuxian was sizing up Xiao Jinyu was also sizing up Jun Wuxian. It was clear from a glance that this handsome man was not an ordinary person, both in appearance and temperament. Mature and steady, he is different from the prince brother, with a bit of laziness and unruliness. "Are you looking for me?" Jun Wuxian nodded. "That's right, I'm Jun Wuxian." "Young Master Jun." Xiao Jinyu nodded, thinking they knew each other, and then he looked at Jun Wuxian expectantly. "I heard that you are from Suanmen? Could it be that Suanmen is recruiting disciples? Being able to enter Suanmen is a great thing. I can only say that the people in Suanmen are so discerning that they chose him." Jun Wuxian said, "No, I'm here for the crown princess." Xiao Jinyu's tone immediately changed after hearing this. "What are you doing with my sister-in-law?" He looked at Jun Wuxian in front of him warily. "My sister-in-law and the prince's brother are in a good relationship. Don't get involved when you have nothing to do." Jun Wuxian looked at Xiao Jinyu, who was turning his face in front of him faster than flipping through a book, and quickly realized the meaning of his words. He thought he was here to break up Shen Shuwei and Xiao Jinyan. Su Qingqing also heard the meaning of Xiao Jinyu's words. She reached out to hold Jun Wuxian's arm, and then raised her head to look at Xiao Jinyu. King Yu, is the crown princess in the camp? No, why are you here? Are you here to see General Su? As Xiao Jinyu spoke, his eyes looked up and down at Su Qingqing and Jun Wuxian, and finally fell on their hands. He let out a sigh in his heart, and held hands in front of everyone. General Su walked in from the outside and saw his sister Su Qingqing at first sight. He strode over. Qingqing. Su Qingqing immediately beamed when she saw her eldest brother. Brother. Why are you here after such a long journey? General Su looked at his sister's face. The scar was clearly visible. His sister's face was still healthy, so why was it injured? He grabbed his sister's hand and asked, Qingqing, what's wrong with your face? Su Qingqing took off her face towel while drinking tea. She was still immersed in the joy of seeing her eldest brother. I'll tell you more in detail later, it's not important now. General Su looked at his sister's hand, which was holding a man's arm. He didn't have time to look at the man, so he immediately pulled his sister in front of him. Su Qingqing looked at her elder brother in confusion. Brother, what are you doing? Su Qingqing was kidnapped and was rescued by Jun Wuxian. General Su didn't even know about the engagement and betrothal, so he acted like this. How can you, a girl, be so close to a man? Su Qingqing said with some embarrassment, Brother, he is my fiancé, Jun Wuxian. No matter how calm General Su was, he was no longer calm now. Fiancé? When did you have a fiancé? How come I didn't know about it? Su Qingqing glanced at Jun Wuxian shyly. Axian and I just came out after we got engaged. There are a lot of 3 matchmakers and 6 betrothals, in front of my father and mother. Axian? General Su knew his sister's temperament. Although she was a little willful, she would not joke about lifelong matters. He then raised his head and looked at Jun Wuxian in front of him, glanced up and down, and then looked carefully a few more times, fearing that he was lying to his sister. Jun Wuxian's back was straight, allowing his future uncle to look at him, but General Su was very similar to old General Su, and he had that kind of righteousness about him. After General Su looked him over, his thoughts of lying to his sister were reduced by half. The man in front of him had good looks and good temperament. He didn't smell like copper, and he didn't look like he was jealous of money. Looking at his sister again, the scar on her cheek was like a disfigurement, but Jun Wuxian didn't care about money. I just heard that Jun Wuxian is from Suanmen, so he doesn't need to plan for a future. General Su looked at his sister again. Why didn't you tell me about your engagement? Su Qingqing explained, time is too urgent. Father said he would tell you when you come back. You guys met on a blind date. General Su himself didn't believe that people from Suanmen came to the capital for a blind date. Su Qingqing shook her head. Axian and I have known each other for several years, and we didn't meet on a blind date. When Jun Wuxian saw Su Qingqing chatting with Su Qingqing, he looked at Xiao Jinyu. Prince Yu, I just heard you say that Shen Shuwei is not in the military camp. Then where did she go? Master Jun, please tell me first, what do you want from my sister-in-law? Xiao Jinyu now does not doubt that he is destroying the relationship between the prince's brother and his sister-in-law, but he must ask clearly. Jun Wuxian didn't hide it either. Although it was not confirmed that Shen Shuwei was Xiaju, it was certain that Shen Shuwei was not the daughter of the Shen family. Because of Shen Shuwei's life experience. Xiao Jinyu frowned when he heard this. What do you mean? Jun Wuxian said quietly, Shen Shuwei is not the daughter of the Shen family, but she is somewhat similar to my sister. I am looking for her now just to confirm whether she is my sister. So that's it. Xiao Jinyu nodded, a little surprised that his sister-in-law was not from the Shen family. It's just that the prince's brother and sister-in-law are not in the military camp now, and have already left for Nanzhao Kingdom. When Jun Wuxian heard this, he couldn't help but clench the folding fan in his hand and asked, what is she doing in Nanzhao Kingdom? Xiao Jinyu said, I went with the prince's brother. What I did specifically, I don't know. Jun Wuxian felt that he had wasted a lot of time. He had known that he would have gone directly to Nanzhao Kingdom. However, if he had not come to the military camp, he would not have known that Shen Shuwei had gone to Nanzhao Kingdom. Here, Su Qingqing also finished reminiscing with General Su. For dinner, several people ate together. Jun Wuxian picked up the wine bottle and poured wine for his future uncle-in-law. General Su looked at the man in front of him. If he had no selfish motives and treated his sister wholeheartedly, he would be a good brother-in-law. Jun Wuxian picked up the wine glass and looked at General Su. Brother. General Su coughed twice, picked up the wine glass in front of him, clinked it with him, then raised his head and drank it all in one gulp. Xiao Jinyu was drinking a small drink and suddenly thought about the prince's brother and sister-in-law. He didn't know how they were doing now. He will return to the capital in the next 2 days. He was still very excited at the thought of returning to the capital and being able to see his wife. Xiao Jinyu drank a little too much tonight, so he went back to the camp and fell asleep. Su Qingqing chatted with her eldest brother for a long time, asking whether her father and mother were okay, and mostly about Jun Wuxian. Axian is a very nice person. Not only is he handsome and good-looking, he will take care of me along the way. Don't worry, brother. General Su said, this is the first time I hear you praise a man like this. It seems that you really like Mr. Jun. My father agreed. As the eldest brother, I will not stop him. It's fine if he is sincere. Su Qingqing said with a smile, brother, I am not a child anymore, I still have a certain eye for others. I believe Axian is a person worth trusting for life. General Su looked at his sister. In the past few years, her sister has indeed grown up a lot and become more sensible. She has changed a lot from her coquettish and domineering attitude. After Su Qingqing came out of her elder brother's place, she saw Jun Wuxian and walked over with cheerful steps. Axian. Jun Wuxian turned back to look at Su Qingqing. In the past, he would have rushed to Nanzhao Kingdom overnight, but Su Qingqing only met her elder brother today and had not rested for 2 more days, fearing that she would not be able to bear it. Have a day off tomorrow, and then we'll set off to Nanzhao Kingdom? What do you think? Su Qingqing stepped forward and held Jun Wuxian's arm, knowing that he was anxious to find his sister. Let's set off tomorrow. Since Shen Shuwei is not in the military camp anyway, staying here would be a waste of time. It's better to leave as early as possible and determine Shen Shuwei's identity as soon as possible. Jun Wuxian smiled and nodded, okay. Early the next morning, Su Qingqing said goodbye to her elder brother and continued on her way with Jun Wuxian. Asterisk. Yasuhan didn't come to Wu Palace for 2 days in a row, which made Shen Shuwei feel relieved. However, Yuxi and several other princes would come over from time to time, saying that they were afraid that she would be bored and wanted to chat with her and stroll around the imperial garden. Shen Shuwei looked at the huge Sansu Palace. It had been a few days since she came here, and she hadn't gone anywhere else. She had nothing to do today, so she took the snow dumpling around the Sanssouci Palace and found that the Sanssouci Palace was bigger than she had imagined. Wu Palace is divided into the main hall and 2 side halls, and the dormitory hall where she lived is one of the side halls. At this moment, Shen Shuwei stood in front of the main hall and looked at it curiously. It was much larger than the side hall. She turned to look at the little palace maid aside, who lived in the main hall before. Good night, babies. Asking for votes. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 569. The little maid has only been in the palace for 2 years, how could she know who lived here before? She shook her head, my lord, I don't know. Shen Shuwei asked again, "Can I go in and take a look?" The little maid was stunned for a moment. "I don't know." Faced with the little maid who didn't know anything, Shen Shuwei didn't get angry, but just looked at the main hall in front of her curiously, wondering who lived with Feng Wu before. To be able to live in the main hall, her status and position must be higher than Feng Wu. She was not the real owner here, so she chose not to go in and take a look without permission. At lunch, Shen Shuwei was eating deliciously, and a little maid reported, "Princess Juyu, the princess is here." As soon as the voice fell, Yanyu walked in slowly. After recuperating for a while, her leg injury had healed and she didn't need the help of the maid. Shen Shuwei ate braised pork and looked up at Yanyu. It is said that no one goes to the temple for no reason. I don't know what Yanyu wants to do. She clenched her chopsticks and picked up another piece of braised pork and put it into her mouth, eating with relish. When Yanyu came in, she saw Princess Juyu eating braised pork, one bite after another, as if she had never eaten meat before. How could she be elegant and dignified like a princess? She was only busy eating, and didn't say anything when she saw her coming. She had no manners at all. If she wasn't the national teacher, how could she be qualified to stay in the palace? No matter how unhappy Yanyu was in her heart, she still perfunctorily squeezed out a smile on the surface. "Princess Juyu, tomorrow is my birthday, and I invite you to attend my birthday banquet." Shen Shuwei hadn't eaten the banquet of Nanzhao Kingdom yet, but from the meals she ate every day, it should be better than Daxia. She agreed almost without thinking, "Okay." Yanyu sighed in her heart. She agreed so quickly. She was very vain. How could she be like a princess? I don't know how she tamed the tiger-lion beast and convinced her father and the prince brother that she was Feng Wu. Even the third prince who had been missing for so long has returned. Yanyu watched Shen Shuwei eat 2 more bites of meat. Tomorrow's birthday banquet, she would definitely be laughed at if she looked like this. She snorted in her heart and turned away. Shen Shuwei lowered her head and continued to eat lunch. Braised pork and fish were more attractive than Yanyu. The little palace maid walked in with small steps and said with a smile, "Master, the emperor sent some clothes over." Shen Shuwei raised her head and saw the idle eunuch walking in with several little palace maids. Each little palace maid was holding clothes in her hands. The colors were bright and very suitable for girls to wear. Eunuch Xian said with a smile on his face, "Princess Juyu, these clothes were made overnight by the emperor when the princess just came back." Shen Shuwei curved her eyebrows and said, "Eunuch Xian, please thank the emperor for me." Eunuch Xian immediately said, no trouble, the princess continues to eat, and I have to go back to serve the emperor." Shen Shuwei nodded, "Okay." Eunuch Xian told them to put down the clothes and led them out. The little maid immediately stepped forward to look at the new clothes, reached out and touched the material, which was something they could never wear in their lifetime. The little maid smiled and looked up at Shen Shuwei, "Master, do you want to try the new clothes? The new clothes are very beautiful." Shen Shuwei shook her head, "No, just put them all in the closet." "I obey your order," the little maid responded and hung the new clothes one by one in the closet. The next day, Shen Shuwei went to attend Yanyu's birthday banquet under the guidance of the maid. Shen Shuwei thought that Yanyu's birthday party was attended by princes and princesses, but when she went there, she found out that there were a bunch of women, either royal relatives or daughters of important officials in the court. At first glance, they looked like a group of butterflies fluttering in the flowers. Someone in the crowd saw Shen Shuwei and asked Yanyu in a low voice, "Princess, who is she?" Yanyu saw Princess Juyu coming, wearing a light pink dress, and her makeup was similar to when she first came. It was obvious that she came without dressing up. "She is Princess Juyu." None of the young ladies present had heard of Princess Juyu, and they looked at Shen Shuwei curiously. Not long after Feng Wu disappeared, everyone in the capital had forgotten about Feng Wu, so they had never heard of her. Why haven't you heard of Princess Juyu? When was she crowned a princess? Look at her makeup and clothes, how can she look like a princess? Look at Enyu, she is the epitome of a princess. Those who came to attend Enyu's birthday party were naturally good friends, and since Enyu was a princess, she could easily flatter her. Even though Enyu was used to hearing these words, she was still very happy every time she heard them, because she was better than Princess Juyu, a country bumpkin. She raised her handkerchief to cover her mouth and laughed secretly. Don't say that, she just came back from outside. Shen Shuwei looked at the group of people in front of her whispering to each other. She could still hear the louder voices. She glanced at the cakes and fruits on the side, walked over, picked up a piece of melon, put it in her mouth and took a bite. Enyu originally wanted to see Princess Juyu's joke, but she saw her walk directly to the table, picked up the fruits and ate them, one piece after another without stopping. Why doesn't she talk? Is she mute? Maybe she has low self-esteem. Look, she just stands there eating without saying a word. Why do I look a little stupid? While they were talking, Shen Shuwei finished the fruits and 3 cakes. Shen Shuwei wanted to finish the battle quickly, eat her fill and leave. Enyu came over with a group of rich ladies, took a look at the melon and fruit peels in front of her, and thought to herself that she was really good at eating. She smiled and said, "Princess Juyu, don't just eat, drink some wine." "I can't drink much, so it's better to eat cakes." Shen Chu smiled and picked up another cake and put it in his mouth and took a bite. "Today is Princess Enyu's birthday, how can you not drink?" When everyone was making a fuss, the palace maid had already brought wine and wine glasses over. Enyu took the initiative to pour a glass of wine and handed it to Princess Juyu, smiling and saying, "Princess Juyu, it was all misunderstandings before. After drinking this glass of wine, we can be considered to have forgiven each other." Shen Chu glanced at the wine in front of her, then looked at Enyu, pouring wine in front of so many people, isn't this forcing her to drink? She asked with a puzzled look on her face, "What misunderstanding is there between us? Why don't I know?" Enyu didn't expect Princess Juyu to play by the rules. "What misunderstanding don't you know? And you ask me back. I misunderstood you before, you are not Princess Juyu. It's not my fault for being suspicious. Princess Juyu has been missing for almost 10 years. We all thought you were in trouble. Even the national teacher thought so. You are not angry, right? Your suspicion is your business. Why should I take it to heart? It can't be eaten as a meal." Shen Shuwei picked up a piece of sweet cake and put it into her mouth and took a bite, eating with relish. Enyu's face looked a little bad. No matter what she said, Princess Juyu just didn't care. She was really thick-skinned. She kept eating, as if those cakes had great charm. Yes, maybe she had a hard life outside, and these cakes were all new to her, so she was so greedy. The eunuch's shrill voice came from outside the door, "His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has arrived. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is here." When the daughters heard that the Crown Prince was here, they showed excited expressions and began to tidy up their appearance. At the same time, they looked at the moon cave door not far away. Yuxi strode in with a birthday gift, accompanied by a group of guards and eunuchs. "Your Highness is so handsome." "Of course, the prince is handsome and has an excellent figure. How many people want to marry him?" "Of course, there is no princess yet. If you marry the prince, you will have the opportunity to be the princess. Who doesn't want it?" The daughters of the rich family squeezed forward desperately while talking, showing their most beautiful scene in an attempt to get the attention of His Highness the Prince. Shen Shuwei had been eating, and was blocked by a group of women after a while. She didn't care and lowered her head to continue eating the food in front of her. Enyu took a look at their actions and their crazy looks, and naturally knew what they were thinking. The prince brother would always marry a woman as the princess. She looked at Feng Wu behind the crowd. If she really chose the princess, she would rather be the daughter of an important official in the court, not Fengwu. Yaenyu led a group of daughters to pay tribute to Yayuxi. Yayuxi came over, glanced at the crowd, and didn't see Fengwu, so he handed the gift in his hand to his sister, Enyu, happy birthday. Yaenyu happily took the birthday gift. Thank you, Prince brother. Your Highness the Prince. Your Highness the Prince. A group of women surrounded Yayuxi, fearing that the prince would not notice her. The women swarmed around, making Yayuxi a little unhappy. Shen Shuwei had already eaten and drunk enough. Looking at the group of people in front of her, she clapped her hands and told the little palace maid beside her, "Tell the princess that I'm leaving first." After giving the instructions, she walked away. Yayuxi raised his head and saw Fengwu behind the crowd. Seeing that she kept walking and walking without any intention of stopping, he shouted to Fengwu who was running away. "Xiaoju!" Yayuxi ignored the group of women in front of him and walked towards Fengwu. The daughters watched the prince abandon them and walk towards Princess Juyu, their eyes full of confusion. Shen Shuwei looked back and saw Yayuxi coming over with a smile on his lips. She had to turn around awkwardly to greet him, "Prince." Yayuxi walked closer and asked with a smile, "Where are you going?" Shen Shuwei said, "I've finished eating and am planning to go back." Yaenyu came over with a smile, "Prince brother, Princess Juyu, sit down and have a drink and chat first." Yayuxi wanted to spend more time with Fengwu, so he said, "Xiaoju, sit down and have a few drinks before going back, how about that? It's lively with so many people, Princess Juyu will certainly give face to brother." Prince Yaenyu took the initiative to take Fengwu's arm and led her to the wine table. "Shen Shuwei. We are not familiar with each other. The wine table is divided into two tables, one for the prince, Yaenyu, and Shen Shuwei, and the other for several daughters." The daughters who originally didn't take Princess Juyu seriously immediately re-examined her after seeing the attitude of the prince towards Princess Juyu. Apart from being beautiful, there is nothing special about her, and she doesn't have the manners of a lady from a noble family. Shen Shuwei looked at the food on the table. She had no interest in chatting, so she could only eat. During the period, she drank 2 glasses of wine, which tasted like fruit wine. She didn't dare to drink more, fearing that she would get drunk and talk nonsense and reveal her identity. Yayuxi lowered his eyes and looked at Fengwu. Seeing that she only ate vegetables and didn't drink, "Don't you like to drink fruit wine?" Shen Shuwei said, "I have a poor alcohol tolerance and drinking habits. I am afraid that I will cause trouble if I drink too much." Yaenyu looked over and explained with a smile, "Princess Juyu, this is fruit wine, not Zuyeking wine. It's okay to drink 2 more glasses." Shen Shuwei smiled slightly, "I'm full." The smile on Yaenyu's lips froze. Yayuxi raised his glass and drank the remaining wine in the glass. After putting down the glass, he looked at Fengwu and said, "I'll take you back." Shen Shuwei was just trying to find an excuse to slip away, but nodded immediately, "Okay. You guys continue, Xiaoju and I will go back first." After saying that, Yayuxi took Fengwu away from the scene. As soon as Yayuxi left, the daughters who had always been curious about the relationship between Princess Juyu and the prince came over to ask, "Princess, what is the relationship between Princess Juyu and the prince?" "Yes, who is Princess Juyu?" Yaenyu said disdainfully, "Why do you care about her? She is just a princess in name only." Asterisk. Yaenyu's palace was a little far from Wu Palace, and it took a long time to reach Wu Palace. Shen Shuwei stepped into Wu Palace with her skirt lifted, and glanced at Yayuxi, seeing that his steps were weak and he looked a bit drunk. No wonder he walks so slowly, it also shows that the fruit wine has a strong after effect. She drank 2 cups and now feels her cheeks are a little hot. She reminded, "Prince, we are here." Yayuxi's body swayed twice, and he reached out to grab Fengwu's shoulders. Shen Shuwei instinctively stepped back until his back was against the pillar and stopped. Yuxi came over with a full body of alcohol, lowered his eyes to look at Feng Wu's delicate face, and called softly, Xiaoju. Shen Shuwei reached out to push Yuxi, but found that he couldn't push him, thinking that he also knew Kung Fu. With the force she just used, ordinary men would have been pushed away. You are drunk, I will ask 2 people to take you back. Shen Shuwei squatted down and tried to get out from under his armpits, but as soon as she got out, she was pushed back to the pillar by Yuxi, and hit Shen Shuwei's butterfly valley. The force was so strong that she cried out in pain. I don't like to contact drunk people because drunkards don't understand human language, and those with bad drinking habits will act like hooligans. It was obvious that Yuxi in front of him had both. As soon as Yesuhan stepped into Wu Palace, he saw Yuxi trying to do something inappropriate to Shen Shuwei, and without saying a word, he slapped him with all his strength. As soon as Shen Shuwei took out the silver needle from the space, she saw Yuxi's tall body flying out and hitting the opposite wall. With a loud bang, Yuxi fell down and vomited blood. She raised her head and looked across, and saw Yesuhan, who had disappeared for 2 days, standing there with a violent aura, and his originally red eyes were now swaying red. Yesuhan did not intend to let Yuxi go. When he walked towards Yuxi, he could vaguely feel the anger coming from him. Yuxi just stood up with the help of the wall, and when he saw Yesuhan, he felt a chill on his back. Before he could explain, he was hit by Yesuhan's palm, and his body hit the wall behind him again, vomiting blood. Let's talk about Yesuhan's personality, paranoid. Good night, babies. Please support with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 570. Shen Shuwei was just stunned for a while, but Yuxi was beaten again and fell to the ground vomiting blood. Looking at Yesuhan, he still refused to give up. He grabbed Yuxi's shirt with one hand and pinched his neck with the other. The blood from the corner of Yuxi's mouth dripped down his neck, dyeing his fair hands red. If this continues, lives will be lost. Shen Shuwei hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed Yesuhan's sleeves, advising, "Third prince, let go quickly, or he will die if you don't let go." Yesuhan said coldly, "He bullied you." Shen Shu turned his head slightly to look at Yuxi. His fair and handsome face was now flushed, his eyes were wide open, and his eyes were beginning to blur, as if he would die in the next second, and if he didn't let go, his braids would really rise. She continued to persuade, "He is just drunk. If you don't let go, your brother will have his hair cut off. If you die, you will die." Yesuhan's voice was cold and bone-chilling, and his body was full of violence, like a life-seeking Shura from hell. At this time, Yesuhan was no different from a lunatic, but the Yesuhan in front of him seemed not to be his brother but his enemy, which made Shen Shuwei tremble with fear. "Third prince, please calm down first and let him go. I'll make you mung bean ice cream. It's delicious." Shen Shuwei tried to use delicious food to resolve Yesuhan's anger, and she also followed suit to quench her greed. Yesuhan paused when he heard the words and glanced at Xiaoju, only to see her expectant eyes. As soon as he let go of his hand, Yuxi fell down like a kite with a broken string and fainted. Shen Shuwei hurriedly knelt down and picked up Yuxi's hand to diagnose his pulse. Seeing her worried look, Yesuhan frowned and grabbed her wrist and pulled her up. "There is a royal doctor in the palace. There is an imperial doctor. I also want to check to see if his life is in danger so that he can get first aid as soon as possible." Shen Shuwei shook off Yesuhan's hand and squatted down to continue diagnosing Yuxi's pulse. Yuxi usually treated her very well. Although he had taken advantage of Feng Wu, she was the one who benefited. Yuxi did not do what he did tonight, but his crime would not lead to death. Yesuhan pursed her lips tightly, stood straight and looked at Xiaoju, and ordered in a cold voice, Someone, take the prince to the Imperial Hospital. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 guards walked in from the door. Shen Shuwei had already checked his pulse. Yuxi's condition was not optimistic. He had serious internal injuries. The first blow might have broken 2 ribs. When the guards came over, Shen Shuwei said, "Wait a moment." The guards looked at each other and then all looked at their master. Yesuhan looked at it without saying a word. Shen Shuwei performed first aid and fed Yuxi a pill before saying, "You guys find a stretcher and carry him to the Thai hospital." The guard looked at his master again, asking for his opinion. Shen Chu slightly noticed and frowned, "Look what he is doing. He is angry now and talks in angry words. Listen to me and carry him on a stretcher." Yesuhan. Guard. When the guards saw that their master was silent, they found a stretcher and carried the prince to the Thai hospital. Shen Shuwei looked at the blood on the ground and frowned. If Yesuhan hadn't appeared, she could have knocked Yuxi out and the matter would not have become a big deal. If the emperor knew that the prince almost had his hair cut off, and that it was Yesuhan who did it because of her. She watched the TV series and came to the conclusion that the emperor least wanted and hated seeing his own sons killing each other because of women. She suddenly understood one thing: Feng Wu was definitely not the emperor's daughter, otherwise Yesuhan and Yuxi's behavior towards Feng Wu would have been too strange, as if they were quarreling. Shen Shuwei glanced at Yesuhan secretly. He was full of hostility and had not calmed down at all. It would be dangerous to stay with him. "Third prince, it's already very late, I want to rest." Yesuhan took 2 steps forward, and Shen Shuwei was so frightened that he took a few steps back. He frowned and reached out to grab her wrist to prevent her from taking any further steps. "Do you think Yuxi's kindness to you these days has no purpose?" Shen Shuwei felt too guilty to look directly into Yesuhan's eyes. "Maybe, because we had a good relationship before." Good relationship? Yesuhan seemed to have heard a funny joke. "If it weren't for your identity, do you think he would be so attentive? There are other princes, so stay away from them because of your identity." Perhaps because of a guilty conscience, Shen Shuwei always felt that Yesuhan knew that she was fake, so she reminded her that the prince and the princess treated her well because of Feng Wu. She was very vigilant about this and had never thought of occupying Feng Wu's identity just because of such good treatment. After the matter is resolved, she promises not to take away a single cloud with a wave of her sleeves. Well, why does she have the illusion that she is a scumbag? Shen Chu lowered her eyes slightly and saw the blood on his hands. In order to change the subject, she took out a handkerchief and handed it over. "There is blood on your hands." Hearing this, Yesuhan lowered his head and raised his hand for a look. There was blood on his fingers and the back of his hand. He frowned and stretched out his hand. "Help me." Shen Shuwei looked at the bloody hand in front of him, raised his head and looked at Yesuhan in confusion, pointed to his other hand and said, "Why do you want me to help? Isn't that hand of yours usable?" Yesuhan said confidently, "We are childhood sweethearts. If your hands are dirty, please wipe them for me." Isn't that too much? Shen Shuwei always felt that Yesuhan was threatening her because of Xiao Jinyan and her fake identity. She curled her lips, looked at the hand in front of her, and reluctantly wiped the blood for him. Sure enough, in this place where the weak eat the strong, the weak can only be oppressed by the strong. Yesuhan stared at Xiaoju without blinking, watching her wipe the blood on her hands, opening her mouth as if talking to herself. "You have wiped my hands before." The voice was a little soft, but the distance between the two was very close, so Shen Shuwei heard it. She didn't know what the relationship between Feng Wu and Yesuhan was like before. Maybe because she and Feng Wu looked similar, she unconsciously thought of her as Feng Wu. No worries. It's also possible that Yesuhan didn't know that she was a fake at all, and she was overthinking everything. Shen Shuwei looked at the blood on his hands. There was a lot of blood, and he couldn't wipe it clean with just a dry handkerchief. She raised her head and looked at Yesuhan. The handkerchief is too dry and I can't wipe it clean. I'll wet the handkerchief. After Shen Shuwei finished speaking, he turned around and ran towards the arch bridge. There was water flowing under the arch bridge, but it was only 10 meters away. She stood on the stone and squatted down, put the handkerchief into the water and rubbed it to clean the blood on it. After cleaning, she stood up and saw Yesuhan standing behind her in the distance. She was frightened and took 2 steps back. This was an instinctive reaction. As a result, he missed his footing and fell backwards. It's over, I'm going to be a drowned rat. Just when Shen Shuwei thought he was about to fall, someone pulled him back. And besides Yesuhan, who else could that person be? After standing firm, she politely thanked him. Yesuhan saw the look in her eyes when she saw him just now, full of fear, so he almost fell into the water. Xiaju was never afraid of him before. I'm cruel to others, but I won't do this to you. You don't have to be afraid of me. Shen Shuwei said, it's hard for me not to be afraid of you like this. Just now, she almost witnessed him murder with her own eyes. At that time, Yesuhan was no different from a lunatic. Yesuhan knew that his behavior just now scared her, and he had no choice but to control himself. At that time, he wanted to kill Yayuxi for daring to bully Xiaju. He stared at Xiaoju for a long time and said, I won't do it next time. Shen Shuwei raised his head and glanced at Yesuhan, not knowing whether what he said specifically meant that he would no longer kill anyone in the future, or if it meant something else. She looked away, looked at his hands, forget it, wipe his hands first, and go back to sleep. Shen Shuwei continued to wipe his bloody hands. The wet handkerchief wiped away the blood easily. After wiping it clean, she breathed a sigh of relief, finally completing the arduous and difficult task. All right. Yesuhan looked down at his hands, which were clean and white, as if they had not been stained with blood. He raised his head and looked at Xiaju, don't worry about tonight, no one will trouble you. After Yesuhan finished speaking, he left without looking back. Seeing how confident he was, Shen Shuwei became even more confused. The prince was so seriously injured, and it was because of her, so how could he not be in trouble? Seeing Yesuhan's figure walking out of the palace gate, she yawned, forget it, the soldiers will cover up the water and the earth will cover it up. Keeping your spirits up is the most important thing. Shen Chu turned slightly and walked into the bedroom. I don't know if it was because I saw Yesuhan's angry look at night that I woke up early the next day. She called the palace maid in, did something happen outside? Master, did you have a nightmare? No wonder the little palace maid would ask this, because Shen Shuwei has always been a sleepy sleeper and almost always wakes up from hunger or from being woken up by her. This is the first time I woke up so early. No, Shen Shuwei was still a little worried and continued to ask, is it true that nothing big happened? It's a big deal. I heard that the third prince beat the prince. The little palace maid came close to Shen Shuwei and whispered in Shen Shuwei's ear, fortunately, it was delivered in time, otherwise the prince's life would not have been saved. Although Shen Shuwei knew that Yayuxi's physical condition was not life-threatening, the tone given to her by the little palace maid made her feel nervous. Does the emperor know? The little palace maid said, the emperor found out last night. He got very angry and the third prince was put into a solitary room. Shen Shuwei asked, what else? The little palace maid shook her head, no more. The emperor didn't blame her, which made Shen Chu secretly relieved. Thinking of what Yesuhan said last night, no one would trouble her, so he already knew. Get ready to wash up. My slave, go get ready now. The little palace maid walked out with brisk steps. After the autumn weather, the weather is getting cooler and cooler. Shen Shuwei looked at the taigan in front of him, playing with Xuetuan, while Kao stood on the head of the taigan, as if he was very powerful. Tigris tried several times but failed to drive away Iroha, and finally gave up. Shen Shuwei waved to the tigress, "Tiger, come here." When the tigress heard this, he immediately abandoned the snowball and ran towards Xiaoju, the tail behind his butt wagging very happily. Every time Shen Shuwei sees that tail, he thinks of a dog. It's so cute. She stretched out her hand to smooth the fur of the tiger and lion beast one after another. The spiritual beast liked this best. When Xue Tuan saw it, he ran over and got into Xiaoju's arms regardless of anything. Shen Shuwei was sitting on the stone, and Xue Tuan easily got into her arms, and then started acting coquettishly. The Tigan saw it, and although it was unhappy, there was nothing it could do about it, because it was really too big and couldn't get into Xiaoju's arms like a snowball. The little palace maid trotted over, "Master, King Biu is here." Shen Chu raised his head slightly and saw Yayuchen striding over behind the little palace maid. She stood up and held a snowball in her arms. Northern King. Yayuchen has always been a straightforward person. Facing Feng Wu, he did not beat around the bush, but asked directly, "Xiaju, do you know about the matter between the third brother and the prince?" Shen Shuwei was a little surprised. "Don't you know?" Yayuchen said, "I just got the news this morning. I heard that the third brother was locked up by the emperor because he almost killed the prince. The emperor did not allow him to visit, so I came to you to find out what happened." Shen Shuwei thought that Yayuchen was too smart. He was sure of what he found. How could he think that she knew the specific process? She was one of the parties involved. Seeing that Xiaju did not speak, Yayuchen ordered the maid beside him, "You all should leave." Yes, the little maid greeted and left. Yayuchen looked at Xiaju, "Can you tell me now?" Shen Shuwei rubbed the snowball in her arms, thought about it and told the truth, "The prince was drunk last night and made a move on me. The third prince happened to see it, and then he made a move. I tried to persuade him, but the third prince at that time hardly listened to others." Yayuchen was relieved after hearing this, "Then it's no wonder that the third brother would do such a heavy thing. For you, he could do it?" Shen Shuwei thought of the scene last night, and did not deny that Yesuhan made a move on Yayuxi because of her last night. That kind of cruelty still makes her feel scared. She kept asking, "How do you know I know the specific process?" Yayuchen said, "I guessed, because you are the only one who can make the third brother so careless about the consequences, and I guess you may know what happened." Shen Shuwei didn't know that something like that would happen last night. If she had known, she would not have let Yayuxi send her off last night, and there would be no such thing. "How long will the third prince be imprisoned?" Yayuchen sighed helplessly, "I don't know yet. The third brother hasn't been back for nearly 10 years. Although the emperor appreciates his ability, this incident was too bad. If the punishment is not severe, it will be difficult to convince the public." Shen Shuwei knew that Yayuxi was beaten to half his life. If it was an ordinary prince, he would be charged with the crime of killing the prince, and the punishment would naturally be severe. Yayuchen looked at her seriously and expectantly, "Xiaju, now only you can help the third brother." Shen Shuwei pointed at herself with wide eyes, "Me? How can I have such great ability?" Yayuchen said, "As long as you tell the emperor that it was the prince who was frivolous first, and the third brother was angry and hurt the prince, you can reduce the third brother's crime." Shen Shuwei was a little entangled. Yesuhan was not a good person. He wanted to kill Xiao Jinyan. Although he did not succeed, he also hurt Xiao Jinyan. Let her help Yesuhan to plead for mercy? Yayuchen saw that Xiaju was reluctant to agree, and frowned, "Why? You don't want to help the third brother? Do you know that you will be caned after being locked up in the solitary confinement room? Good night, babies. Please give me monthly tickets and recommendation tickets."